Hey, we're live. Wow. We already have like 60, 70 people waiting already. That's pretty impressive for this late at night. Usually when we have these late night things, they don't get to watch because they're late for people in England and they're late for people back east. So this is pretty cool. Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking tonight with Godless Atheist. Before we get started, he has a few things he wants to get off his chest, but he has messaged me on Twitter. I've known him for a while, and he wanted to have a one-on-one. And I was like, okay. Now, I am having a debate on this very thing tomorrow. I'm not going to blow my entire load tonight, sorry, of what I'll be talking about tomorrow, but hopefully you can get in a little bit and then ask questions and kind of have a back and forth Q&A where he has some things that he would like to say and maybe run some arguments, or I don't know. Show me the error in my ways, I guess. But anyways, Godless Atheist, welcome. And what do you want to announce?
Well, first off, g'day guys. I am Godless Aussie. Hope you're all having a good day. Second of all, let me preface this entire video by saying I know absolutely nothing about philosophy and epistemology. So this is more or less not as an actual debate, but more so an education for me. I wanted to speak to, I think it was Evans Murphy beforehand. But my health got deteriorated. So I've got Steve, and we're just having a powwow right now, so I can basically understand what is philosophy, what is epistemology, and why when I say certain terms, I'm fairly wrong.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, I know Evans. So where do you want to start? I mean, obviously the things that usually people talk about the most is whole agnostic atheism stuff.
Yeah.
Do you want to dive into that, or do you want to talk about something else, kind of get into that in philosophy? And by the way, people know I'm not a philosophical expert. I just happen to read a lot about the topic, and I happen to enjoy the topic. People tell me I have a kind of a mindset for it, but I'm not anybody who's well educated in it. But I have a decent understanding for a layperson, I think.
Well, I'm probably wanted to just say straight up, the thing that annoys most people when I say I am agnostic atheist. Basically, I break it down like this. I'm an agnostic because I don't know whether there is a God or not, but I'm also an atheist because the evidence that has been presented to me so far, I reject and I do not believe in.
Okay.
So that annoys a lot of people when I say agnostic atheist.
Well, I mean, the question really goes to: do you want to be epistemically sound, or you just want to like say stuff? I hold the position that if you're going to talk about biology, then you need to use terminology that biologists use in order to understand each other. The whole, agnostic atheist thing doesn't make much sense from an epistemological point of view. Even Matt Dillahunty recently, as far as 2017, has came out and said that he doesn't think that it makes any sense. He called it nonsensical in the weak case, meaning that atheists will just assign the atheism to be the lack of belief that God exists. Right now, that's very, very specific because people have to understand when we're using these terms, it's only for communication purposes, right? I could use different words to mean different things, but I want people to know the concepts. So words like strong atheist and weak atheist, when I say like in the weak case, that generally will imply to a person that strong case would be not a matter of conviction. It's not a matter of, oh, I really believe this. It's a matter of I'm making the positive assertion that God does not exist. The weak atheist does not. The weak atheist says, I merely do not believe. Now, Dawkins changes that up in his scale a little bit, but that's why most people don't use Dawkins scale.
Oh my.
So are you okay with using terms that way, strong and weak atheist?
Well, yeah, I mean, for the purpose of this video, definitely. In that regards, I would be a weak atheist because I simply don't know and I don't believe with what I've got so far.
All right, so let's go down that route. Okay, so when I did my flow chart that Matt Dillahunty really didn't like, even though I had asked Ozzy, what is it that Matt's really having an argument about? Even he was at a loss. So I don't know what Matt's issue was having the question of does God exist? The question is, does God exist, right? And we're not asking, do you know if God exists or not? What we're asking is, do you hold a belief? Do you believe that the ontological state of affairs is that there is no gods? So the theist, of course, will say yes to that question, right? The atheist in philosophy, generally be the strong atheist, would say no. Now, you're not saying either one of those, right? You're not saying there is a God, and you're not saying there is not a God, correct?
That's correct. I'm just simply saying I don't know.
Okay. Well, I don't know. You got to be very careful of, and this is what I think a lot of people get confused of. I don't know can be one of two things. It could be either just an ordinary expression of doubt or uncertainty. Hey, what time is this going to happen? What time's the party? Oh, I don't know. You don't have an idea, right? You're uncertain. I don't know,
Exactly.
maybe 3 o'clock. But when we say we don't have knowledge, right? That's something completely different. Knowledge in epistemological terms is very, very specific. It has to meet certain criteria to be knowledge. So if I'm not saying I don't have knowledge when I say I don't know. What I'm saying is I don't have enough information to make a informative evaluation of the proposition. So I'm suspending judgment on it. That's
Yeah.
You just don't know how to answer, right? It's epistemic doubt.
Exactly. Well, in that sense, I do have epistemic doubt.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so let's ponder that a little bit more. So if I get you, do you think that propositions do hold truth values? Like if I say gods exist, can that statement be true or false?
Depending on the context, some propositions can have a truth value, but if it is very vague in that sense, I would say no. We need more information. We need more conditions. We need more context.
So that is not a truth app statement. You don't think that gods exist? Let's make it this way. So simplicity. When I say gods, I'm going to just say God.
Okay.
Okay, not just to mean all gods, but so God exists. You don't think that statement can be true or false?
It can be true or false, but we definitely need a lot more information about it.
Okay. So it can't be true or false. It's truth apt.
It is. It's truth apt. But
Now,
basically, before we do that, we need to basically do one thing. We need to define God. A lot of these theists don't do that.
I'm not going to do that because I'll spend 2 hours wasting my time on that. If somebody comes into a conversation, they need to understand what they mean by the God. If they haven't gotten to God out, if they haven't understand what a concept of God is, I just don't really want to spend much time with it. That's like saying, let's talk about cars. What's a car?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I mean, it really is to me the same thing. It's like, hey, let's talk about biology. What's evolution? Well, if you don't understand what evolution is, you're not going to understand biology very much. Somebody needs to have their own concept of what God is. If they don't have one, then they need to go find one if they want to have a productive conversation. It's not my job to give them a definition of God, right? I mean, we have 2,000 years of historical context that we can derive from. We can pick something, pick anything you want, a creator deity, right? A being that created the universe, a supernatural deity. Find something that works for you. It makes no difference to me. I can work with any of it.
Oh, very cool. Oh, well, with the context so far, over the thousands of years, including Dead Sea Scrolls and everything like that, I would say the evidence does not point to it being a yes.
Okay, well, okay, fair enough. But let's start again. There's a proposition to be had. God exists, and you're saying that you don't have enough information to say that proposition is true or false, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now let's change the proposition to the negative. God does not. God does not. Or excuse me. God does not exist. Okay. So the first proposition is God exists, and the negation is God does not exist. Do you think that proposition is true or false?
I can't answer. I can say that it is unlikely. It's improbable, but I can't say yes or no.
Okay, so you can't evaluate it. You can't say that that's true or false.
Exactly.
Okay, so you have two propositions, right? Now, one God exists, one God does not exist. Now, I think you would agree that ontologically, it is the case that God exists or God does not exist. It's either one or the other. There cannot be any other options.
True.
Okay. Now, if God exists, then it's false that he does not exist. And if he does not exist, it's false that he does exist, right? So if in using it in the strong terms, if theism is true, atheism must be false. If atheism is true, theism must be false. They're called contradictories. They're not called dichotomy. People make this weird mistake and they say, oh, atheists and theists are dichotomous. No, they're not. Go find it anywhere that says that. They're not. Anywhere that's not a blog written by some atheist. No, they're not. They're called what's called contradictories. And what a contradictory is, you have two things where one can be true, one can be false, or vice versa. They both cannot be true at the same time, right? God cannot exist and not exist at the same time, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Okay. And they both can't be false. It has to be one or the other.
Exactly.
Now, that's different from what's called contraries. A contrary would be something like atheistic versus theistic. Now, think about this. A theistic thing would be something like Christianity, right? Atheistic may be something along the lines of Buddhist, right? Those are Buddhist religions, right? They both could be actually false, right? They don't necessarily have to be both be true, but they can't both be true, but they both can be false.
Yeah, and that is the contrary.
The contrary is correct.
Yeah, and
Okay. All right. So now we've established contraries versus contradictions versus dichotomy, and there's also like all subalterations and other things. But we're not going to get into that because they're confusing even to me. Okay, so so let's go from there. So you have two propositions now, neither of which you hold that are true or false. Now, there's a word for that in philosophy. Do you happen to know what that word is?
atheism?
No.
No, agnosticism.
Agnosticism, yes. And what agnosticism is the psychological state of being agnostic on a proposition. Now, again, This is different from a label. You can label yourself anything you want. This is one thing I'm going to be bringing up in my debate tomorrow. So people that are watching this, you're going to hear this twice because this is an integral part of my argument tomorrow. You can label yourself anything you want. What you can't change is material facts.
Exactly.
And a material fact is that if you do not believe God exists and you do not believe that gods do not exist, you literally are agnostic on that proposition as per philosophy. There's no getting away from that, because that is what it means, or at least I should say understood to mean when you see agnostic on P, right? And if somebody thinks otherwise, they need to tell me what they think agnostic on P means if they read that in a paper, right?
Okay. Now, what is agnostic on P? Forgive me. I'm just going to say this to everyone. I am hugely math illiterate due to my physical disability. I was not able to have a proper functioning brain when I was a child.
Oh, I thought you were more like born with 9 hands, so that's the highest you counted up. 9 fingers, that's the highest you counted up to.
Yeah, no.
Damn it, no thumb. 9, 11.
No, I have what's called hydrocephalus.
Yeah, hydrocephalus, water in the brain.
Yeah, and I have a Chiari malformation, so they had to literally, when I was 72 hours old, fiddle with my brain to.
All right, well, no worries. No, we'll make it for you. Don't worry, we'll make it pretty easy to digest. All right, so agnostic on P just means that if you have the proposition, you're not assigning a truth value to it. You've suspended judgment. You say, look, I don't know how to answer this.
Mm-hmm.
It is easy if it's true or false, right? But I don't have an idea one way or another. I cannot justify saying that I believe it's true, and I cannot justify believing that it's false. So all people out there, they're a lack of belief, atheist, we're going to call them weak atheist for this discussion. Okay, all weak atheists are agnostic on the propositions. Now, again, you can call yourself what you want, but that doesn't change the fact that you are agnostic on the proposition. They're identical propositions. They're both fence sitters. You are a fence sitter. You do agree, right?
Yeah, I am a fence sitter. Yeah.
Okay. So I had a discussion with somebody before, and they're like, "No, I'm not a fence sitter." I'm like, well, "You said that you don't have a belief either way. You're a weak atheist." Yeah, that's a fence sitter. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It most certainly is.
It is. You quite literally don't know.
Yeah, you're sitting between. Yeah, you're sitting between God exists and God does not exist. You're sitting on that fence, right? You haven't made a decision either way whether P is true or false. What they're thinking is, the mistake that they make is they think that because there is a dichotomy of either you believe or you don't believe, which would be, and again, we're assuming classical logic. There are other types of logic out there. I'm happy to discuss those too, my limited amount of knowledge about them, but we're going to work within the framework of classical logic, which means you believe or you don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
That is a dichotomy. It's one or the other.
Exactly.
But agnosticism is not on the fence of that. Agnosticism, they don't believe. Agnostics don't believe. They are non-believers. There's no middle ground there. The middle ground is between believing that it's true and believing it's false. There you have agnosticism.
Yeah. Okay. And well, it's true. How can you believe something that you don't know?
Well, okay, that's a problem there, because you have to believe something before you can know it.
Well, exactly.
So what people do is they confuse what's called epistemic knowledge with explicit knowledge. And what they mean by explicit knowledge is more information, right? And information and knowledge are not the same thing in epistemology. When I say I know P, that means I have very specific conditions that I'm meeting. It means that I believe that is true. It is true, and I'm justified to believe true. And that's one way of looking at it. That's just called justified true belief, but there's others. But in the very simplistic way that looks at knowledge that most people use, justified true belief is I believe that it's true, P is true, and that I'm justified to believe that. If I can meet those conditions, I can say I have knowledge. Okay? But I have to believe something first before I can say that I know it.
Exactly. That's a fair point. And in this discussion, are we talking about P as in proof?
P as in proposition.
P as in proposition. Okay. And B would be believe or belief.
So like BP would be believes P. Now, I when I write my stuff, I use the Malpass method. I just use it very, very compactly. Normally, when you see in logic, you'll see BAP. And you're like, what the heck does that mean? It means agent believes P.
Now,
Or
I'm
you can
just
use
gonna.
SP or some other things, but BAP means agent believes P. I just shortened it down to BP because I just think you can just shorthand. That's all.
That's a fair call. Now, are we doing something in a similar to Bayes' theorem here?
No.
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 Okay, fair
Just
enough.
predicate logic.
Okay.
All right. So let's go back to where we were because you agree that you're basically a philosophical agnostic then.
Yes, I do. Yeah, basically, I say it like this: I'm agnostic atheist. But if people want to define me in one word, I would say agnostic, in one word. But I only extend it just because some people don't understand that.
All right. Well, let's see. Do you want your position to be coherent?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Because this is a big thing with me, coherency, right? And this is why so far you're doing well, but this is where your coherency fails.
Yes.
If you're going to accept atheism as a lack of belief and refer to yourself as an atheism, you're more than welcome, obviously, to do that. Matt Dillahunty is completely wrong when he keeps telling people that I'm arguing for people. They can't do that. He has many times gone on many different shows and says, Steve tells people that they can't be an atheist, or an atheist is somebody who believes is only somebody who believes that there are no gods. I've never made any of these arguments.
No.
So it's just a straw man. I don't care what you label yourself. I want people to be consistent in their ontology, though.
Yeah.
So when you have, and even Matt does agree with this part, as I specifically asked him, if you lack a belief, right, that is not what's called a dasastic position. It's not a belief position, basically. You're basically saying, you're not saying I believe something. You're just saying that I have no belief on that either way. So it's nonsensical to then try to epistemically justify it with the word agnostic, which would in this case would be a knowledge modifier. You have to have a belief knowledge. You have to have a belief position first. Then you can modify with knowledge. And let me give you an example. Let's say as a theist, because I find that theism, nobody ever gives has a problem or gives a damn about how theism is defined. Never an issue with that. It's always agnostic or atheist, but it's never theist. So let's work with theist because then people can go, oh, that makes sense. So theist, you obviously agree, I think, is somebody who believes there's a God, right? Not controversial.
No.
If that theist just said, I lack a belief that gods do not exist, right? Then they would be, well, if a person just says, I lack a belief that gods do not exist, they would be a weak theist, in which case they can call themselves a theist and not actually believe in God. There's a problem there because we understand theism to be the belief that God doesn't exist. Now think about what I just said there, and there's two things I'm going to be going with this, but this is important.
Yeah, that is a bit. That is a little bit confusing.
It's called mirroring, right? And so, because if not, you suffer special pleading.
Yeah.
But let's look at the proposition: gods do not exist. Well, God does not exist, right? Now, if you said that was true, you'd be a theist. And if you think it's, or if you think it's true, you'd be an atheist. You'd be a strong atheist, but you'd be an atheist. And you think it's false, right? Then you'd be a theist. Fair enough. But what happens if you don't sign a position either way, right? I'm not saying that I believe that gods don't exist. The theist can then go, well, you know what? You are a weak theist. Therefore, you're a theist. Because in that case, you're a theist, but you don't have a God belief. This is the same analogy that atheism is when it comes to weak atheism. If the proposition is God exists and you say, well, I don't have a belief on that, then the atheists go, well, you're a weak atheist. And they just shorten that to atheist. So you're an atheist without the belief that gods exist, which is normally how it is in philosophy, right? It is normative that in philosophy, atheism is held to be most often the belief that God does not exist. But here you have an instance where you're an atheist that you don't hold that belief that God does not exist. But by mirroring it, now you can have a theist that doesn't believe in God. That
is so confusing.
It's really not, though. Try explaining this. You think it's confusing. But it does make sense, right? Because you're basically mirroring. So there's an inconsistency there. So if you allow for one, you got to allow for the other. And I think that saying that you're a theist and you don't believe in a God is just nonsensical to me. And this is why I think lack of belief definition is nonsensical to me as well, because it's not a way to actually make sense to say, oh, well, we're going to assign you to this position. But that's completely up to you. But that's not really where I'm going with all this, believe it or not. Is actually I'm going further. So going back to the atheist, agnostic atheism thing. So if you're a theist, right, and you do believe there's a God, okay, that's just a dasastic position. That's just saying I hold the belief. You would agree that that's not making the knowledge claim, correct?
No, it's just a belief.
Right. But there are theists out there that do say, I know God exists, aren't there?
Yeah, there is, and that really does confuse me why they would make such a claim like that.
Well,
I mean,
let's argue that for whatever reason they do.
Exactly. I mean, there's over 3,000 gods that may or may not exist, and your one is the most likely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little confusing, but epistemologically speaking, you can now modify that and say, and this I'm okay with this, Gnostic theist, right? Not a Gnostic, but a Gnostic theist would be somebody who now modifies that belief into a knowledge claim, because it's already a belief claim. But they take it one step further. They say, not only do I believe, I take that I have knowledge. So they can call that a Gnostic atheist. No big deal, right? There's nothing nonsensical about that, right? But remove the Gnostic part. You still have theist. There's in the belief case, right? For a theist, agnostic theist and theist are exactly the same thing. There is no distinguishability between them. What is the difference between a theist and an agnostic theist? Nothing. They're both just making a belief claim. They're both claiming, I'm not making any claims to knowledge. I don't know one way or another, but I'm making a belief claim. So take that to the mirroring. If a theist said, well, I just lack a belief that gods do not exist, what are you modifying there if you throw in agnostic? You're not modifying anything. I literally have a blog that I showed like 12 different ways this can be interpreted using logic. And I'll be showing that tomorrow. We'll do it tonight, because like I said, I'm not going to blow my entire load on you guys tonight, but tomorrow. But strictly speaking, the most I can get out of it is I know that I lack a belief. Okay, well, so what? Agnostic atheist doesn't give you any informative information. All it does is confuse people, and it bogs down the dialogue, because these things were not meant to be joined together. One's ontology, one's epistemology, right? And they're not meant to be mixed very much. They're not this, that multi-axial thing that you see, where you see like belief and knowledge like that. You're never going to find that in any paper, because it makes no sense. It's just tripe. Beliefs to be landscape, single axial. And then as you get more confident, you become knowledge if you meet certain conditions. But knowledge doesn't require certainty. So that's why I hold that agnostic atheism does nothing but confuse people, because it could be construed in so many different ways, and it serves no purpose. And if you do it in the lack of belief case, it's nonsensical. You can't epistemically modify something that's not a belief to begin with. That's like saying my brown non-car. What does that mean? I have a car. Like if I say my car and I'm modifying it with green or something, right? I can do that. I have a car I can modify. How do you modify a non-belief?
Well, that's true.
Can't.
So that is true. That is true.
Yeah, Matt Delahanty recognizes that as well. He's like, yeah, you can't, Now he doesn't express it the way I do, but it's same thing. But
you can't modify a non-belief with knowledge if it's a non-belief.
Right. You have to have belief, because knowledge is a subset of belief. You have to have belief before you can modify it with knowledge. So if I say I believe 2 + 2 is 4, right? I can then say, and I also know 2 + 2 is 4. But I can't say I know 2 + 2 is 4 without implying or entailing I believe 2 + 2 = 4. Because knowledge is a subset of belief.
And I think I'm starting to understand where it's similar to some other arguments that were done earlier tonight. I don't know, but I know that you're wrong. Something like that.
Oh, I get those all the time, right? But they're not able to articulate where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And I will throw this out there. There's something in Speech Act where belief is considered to be sometimes to be hedging kind of thing. Look, if I say, hey, Godless, what time is it? And you say, well, I believe it's 4 o'clock. There's a perlocutionary effect that I have that says to my brain, oh, well, he's not quite sure. There's some doubt there. Although completely true, you do believe that, and you might even know it, right? But you don't go around saying, hey, well, Steve, yeah, I know it's 3 o'clock. No, you say, well, I believe it's 3 o'clock, right? Even though you might actually know it. It's just in speech, we don't go around saying those things. It's not how we communicate.
Yeah, it's a non-standard.
It's not normative, right? But it wouldn't be wrong. If I looked at my watch and it was 3 o'clock, and I have a reliable mechanism by which I can determine that, and I believe it, and I'm justified to believe it, I have knowledge. I can literally say, I know it's 3 o'clock. But who talks like that? Now, what would happen, Ozzy, if my watch was broken? Let's say it was actually 3 o'clock, but my watch was broken and it broke 12 hours earlier, analog watch. And I'm looking at it and I look at it and it's 3. I look at it, it's 3 o'clock, but it's broken. It actually is 3 o'clock. I'm justified to believe it's 3 o'clock.
But is it the right 3 o'clock?
Do I have knowledge at that point?
Exactly. Well, and in that circumstance that you don't.
We don't. Right. You don't have knowledge because you don't have a reliable mechanism by which you can say that you have knowledge. You're not justified at that point. You have what's called a false true belief. Oh, excuse me, an unjustified true belief.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Well, actually, no. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to say when we say that, I would say you have a justified true belief, but it's not knowledge. This is one of those cases where Gettier would say that you had a belief that was justified because you thought it was going to be right. You had reasons to believe that your watch should have been accurate. So you have a justified true belief, but it's not constitutive of knowledge because it was called epistemic luck. That's a factor. And epistemic luck can never be construed as knowing, just like guessing can never be construed as knowing. Does that make sense?
A little bit. I'm going to admit I'm a dumbass. I don't know a lot of those terms.
Well, those are more advanced stuff.
But the basic premise that you're saying towards me does make a lot of sense.
Well, I mean, I just got out of a group on Facebook where, like admin's like, well, I know there's no gods. And I'm like, well, okay, what's your argument for that? And then they're just relating it to like other mythos. And I'm like, okay, that's justified for your belief. I get that. But how do you justify it as knowledge? Knowledge is a very high epistemic bar. I mean, if we knew there's no gods, why were people arguing about it for so many thousands of years? Right? We don't have that knowledge. I don't. Now, I'm not an agnostic where I say, well, knowledge of gods is impossible. Another thing that I think Matt gets wrong. Matt keeps telling people that for some reason he thinks I'm a Huxley agnostic. I'm not. But I don't say that we don't have. I just believe that we don't have knowledge at the time, but I don't think it's impossible. But I think it's very unlikely that somebody truly can make an argument. At least I haven't seen one yet that they know God exists or no God does not exist. Yeah, I mean, do you see many philosophers arguing that? Not many, if any.
Not many.
No, because it's too high of an epistemic bar to meet. Now, belief, sure, right? You can say I believe there's no gods because, most of the time they've all been myth, and we can explain things better now, and we've never discovered a god. We've never discovered any properties of gods. They've always been attributed to us, just like a superhero. We can make those kind of arguments. So let me ask you this: why is it you don't believe that there are no gods?
Well, let's start with the basic. I was a pastor at one stage for the Salvation Army. And there was the Bible that I had at the time had so many contradictions that the mentor that I actually replaced at the time gave me his Bible with so many things like use this instead of this or say that instead of that, because the very next sentence would have a contradiction to the one that I was supposed to say. Okay,
but I'm not asking you I'm not asking you why you don't believe there isn't a God. I'm asking you why you don't hold the belief that there are no gods. Why are you not a strong atheist to the point where you say, yeah, I believe there's no gods?
Well, I only have partial knowledge of one religion, one God, and I don't have knowledge about the thousands of other gods. I haven't researched them properly, so I
use
can't
information in that case. You don't have information, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you think you think though, so because there might, you're basically arguing there might be some gods out there that exist, therefore you don't feel justified to say that there are no gods, because I don't think that necessarily follows. I mean, I can say there are no gods and be fully fine with saying, yeah, the possibility exists. Again, somebody told me that it's impossible for gods to exist. When you ask them, okay, well, you have to show that in a logical structure that no gods could exist in any possible world. They fail every time.
It's not so much that I'm hoping that there's a God or I'm believing that there may be a possibility of a God. It's just the fact that I don't have the information. And with the information that I have so far, it's turning out to be sort of an improbability. So okay. I'm more leaning towards strong atheism.
So you're agnostic leaning toward atheism.
Yeah, so I haven't crossed that bar yet, but it is coming.
No, and I get that. And, and it's funny you mentioned that. This is one of the reasons why I think that people that try to argue that agnostics are atheists are doing a disservice even to themselves, because people that are leaving theism oftentimes need a place to go, and they don't want to automatically go, oh, you know what, I'm now an atheist. They don't either, they don't want to take the label or whatever, or I don't want to say that I believe there's no gods. And agnosticism is a happy middle ground. It is no more closer to theism than it is to atheism. It is right there in the middle. And so a person can say, like you, it seems like you did. You say, well, I'm a theist. You know what? I'm losing my faith. I'm not believing any longer. Where do I go from here? Well, you know what? I don't have a position on this any longer. I don't know what to think. I doubt. I don't mean this pejoratively. I'm confused of what to answer. Right? Because we all get that, right? I'm confused. I have no idea what to answer some of these questions. And so you're agnostic, and then as you learn more about the arguments, you say, yeah, you know what? I think it is more likely the case that there are no gods. And that whatever that bar is, that threshold, that number, magic number, I don't think there's a fine line of demarcation there, but that's fine. If you say, look at, there's probably 90% chance there are no gods, that is more than enough justification to say there are no gods, period.
Fair call.
Yeah.
Fair call.
I place it a lot lower than that, but 90 definitely. Yeah. I mean, think about it. If you said, hey, if I said, I tell you what, I'm going to spin a wheel, and 90% chance that you're going to win $1 million. You're going to believe that you're going to win $1 million. You can hold that belief and be completely justified. Would you not?
No, because I've in that context, I've been stung. So I always believe the 10%.
Oh, okay. You're a pessimist. All right. How about this? 99.999999999%. Would you believe it then?
I believe it's a strong possibility.
Oh, that's more than a strong possibility. That's when you get to 5 or 6 sigma, that's enough belief to even hold that we discovered a new particle, fundamental particle. So if a physicist says, yes, we've discovered a particle, we believe it, we know it at 5 sigma or 6 sigma, I think it's good enough for me.
Fair call. Well, I've been in a situation where there's only been that sort of wheel, and there's only been that much of me not winning, and I've hit that. So
yeah, I get you. No, okay. For you, it might be a little bit different. I get that.
But I just wanted to. Sorry to interrupt. Steve Carroll. Sean Carroll. Godless Atheist. So I'd firmly say you are a local atheist in relation to the Abrahamic God. I'm not sure what it means by local atheist.
Oh, I'll explain it. And yeah, if you're a Gnostic atheist, you can just say atheist as well. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, a Gnostic atheist would say, yeah, I believe there's no gods, but I also know there's no gods. But again, I have yet to find a Gnostic atheist that can justify it. Good luck. I mean, if you think that you can justify it, I would love to read your paper on it. But here's what I would require minimum. You need to tell me what theory of knowledge you're using, what theory of truth you're using, what truth makers you're using. And you need to make a very strong argument that this is allowing you to have what's called knowledge, right? It's not just a mere belief, because I think it'd be very difficult to do that. But anyways, so your question was, what was it again?
It was if I'm a local atheist to the Abrahamic gods, and I would probably say I don't have firm knowledge or firm information on that. I would just...
You're agnostic on that too?
I'd put it more back to a belief. I do not believe...
Well, do not believe it's not a belief. Careful. I mean, so let's start to make it simple.
I don't believe in Abrahamic gods.
Well, yeah, but you don't believe in any gods because you're you're atheist or agnostic. So it's already been established you do not have a God belief. So you're not giving us any more information by saying that, right? So let me start with something that I know I can understand better. You believe Zeus does not exist, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you have a belief in that case. That is a local god. So that you can make cases for local gods that do not exist. I believe Zeus does not exist. Ocean believes Zeus does exist, right? Two different beliefs. But I think we're both justified in our own way to make those claims. But those are local, right? Those are local. So you can still say I do not, or I disbelieve that there are certain gods. And disbelief, by the way, unlike Matt twice now has told somebody that disbelief does not mean what it actually is used in philosophy. He thinks for some reason disbelief means do not believe. No, Matt, you're wrong on this. I can cite you numerous sources on this, and we can go look this up. Disbelief is held to be the position of the proposition being false.
Okay.
So you believe P means you believe it's true. Disbelief means you believe it's false. That's how it's held in philosophy. But he told a caller that was wrong, and I was like, really? You're going to tell a guy that's actually correct in philosophy that he's wrong? That's silly. I mean, that to me is like calling up a show, creationist show, and saying, well, evolution is a change of allelic frequency from one given population to the next population over time. And they go, no, evolution just means change. No, what? That's what I heard. That's when I heard him tell a person, not once but twice, disbelief was not what it actually is held to be, which is the belief that gods don't exist or that proposition is false. It was cringeworthy. But anyways, back to the thing here. So,
and yes, I would be.
You could disbelieve certain gods and still be agnostic, by the way. So they're asking you, do you believe or disbelieve that the Judeo-Christian God Yahweh exists?
Well, I'd be a local atheist to the Abrahamic gods, definitely.
Right. And what about Christ?
Christ, definitely.
Okay,
definitely.
That's coherent.
I mean, definitely, I'd be a local atheist to that in that regard. The thing that got me almost immediately, even when I was in the faith, was he spent 5 days on one planet, then 1 day with the rest of the galaxy. I mean, that was the first alarm, and that was in Genesis. So,
well, I think Genesis is all hype, all story, anyways. I don't find anything legit in Genesis. So I mean, I have my own beliefs, right? I mean, I believe that the flood never happened, right? I believe that I believe very strongly the Earth is around 4.5 billion years old, right? That's a belief. Actually, I would go one step further, and I can claim that as knowledge. But that would again require a whole different topic. But yeah, I know that it is true that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old.
Exactly. And if there was a flood, the Native Americans did not even bat an eye about it.
Yeah. Vlad mentioned something's really cool. I'm looking at the live chat, by the way. Vlad Teps, he says this. He says, for non-philosophers, I'd say those who respond, I don't believe in X, or I believe that X doesn't exist, mean the same thing with their statement. There's have to be, and he's not wrong on this. This is going to blow some people's mind that haven't heard me before. What Vlad's talking about is something called negation raising. Okay. And what a neg raise is, or negation raising, is how we understand things in common parlance. When somebody says something like, hey, Godless, are you going to go to the party tonight? And you say, well, I don't believe that I'm going. We infer that to mean you have the belief that you're not going, right? We take that to mean you're not going, right? We don't take that to be, oh, well, you're undecided, right?
Mm-hmm. It's usually towards, no, I don't think I'm going. Basically, that
same thing.
It's referred to as most likely no.
Yeah, right. But either I don't think I'm going, or I don't believe so. We take that to be negation raising. We'll raise it to an actual negation that you are not going, that you hold the belief that you're not going, or you do think that you're not going. That's how it is in semantic theory or speech act theory. This is what we do in society. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's called negation raising. The problem is in logic, it doesn't work that way, right? You can't say that that believes P entails does not believe P. Excuse me, believes P entails does not believe P, but you can't say does not believe P entails believes P, right? So logic doesn't work that way. The converse doesn't work. If I believe P is true, right? Clearly, I do not believe that is false.
Okay. Now, much like there is negative raising, is there positive raising in any regards?
Well, no, it's the same thing. I mean, what a neg raise is basically you're raising it to full negation. Because then atheism is a negation of theism, right? If theism is the belief that gods exist, the negation of that is that gods do not exist. So when I say that I do not believe that gods exist, a negation raising would be raising it up to the full negator of I believe that gods do not exist. I don't know what positive negation would even entail.
No, it would be the exact opposite, where it raises to a negative, it would raise to a positive.
Yeah, I don't think that makes any sense. If I say I believe that there are no gods, how would you interpret that? I mean, the problem is that when I say I believe there's no gods, it entails I don't have a God belief, right? You can't get away from that. You cannot have one without the other.
No, that's
when
true.
It comes to that. Or you assume you can't have a belief without having a not belief. I mean, think about that really carefully. This is why all atheists lack a belief, but not all who lack a belief are atheist.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I know it's true, but you tell certain atheists that and they lose their minds. And the reason for that is that because no matter what kind of atheist you are, whether you're a weak atheist, you lack a belief, or a strong atheist, you still lack a belief. But the reason you lack a belief is because you believe there are no gods.
Yeah.
This is the problem with people using dictionaries, because dictionaries don't make those distinctions very well, and they don't explain to people why you lack a belief, right? And atheism in philosophy is the belief that there are no gods, it's most likely to be held. But why do you lack a belief? Well, you lack a belief because you believe there's no gods. But the Bible doesn't go that. I mean, it's not the Bible. The dictionaries don't often go that into that, right? They don't tell you more about that. They just say, "Oh, lack of belief." Well, that's true, but you can also say atheists are people. Okay, so what? It's not giving you any real sufficient information on what constitutes an atheist in philosophy. Lack of belief is a necessary but not sufficient condition, meaning that you have to be, you can't have a God belief, right? You have to lack a belief to be an atheist. But in philosophy, since an atheist is somebody who believes there's no gods, that's only a partiality of what you need. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Sufficiency would be actually having the belief. Now, again, this is just how it is philosophy. I don't know how anybody would ever disagree with that. What they could argue is, well, in our little group, American Atheists, we don't hold that. Okay, American Atheist, atheist experience, we don't hold it that way. Okay, whatever. It doesn't change the material facts that this is how it's held most commonly in philosophy. They can't get away from that. And that's why Matt really I'm a thorn in his side, because he keeps I think putting out misinformation when he tells people, well, you have to be a theist or an atheist in your group. I'm not in your group. Don't tell me what I have to be when I'm not in your little group. Yeah. So, all right. So what else you got for me? Any other questions or live chat? What we got? Anything?
I am actually wondering, because I want to try and improve my math. Can you give me that equation?
Which equation? There's quite a few equations.
I mean, you've explained it with BP, but I'm just wondering if I can get the full equation with its
For what, agnosticism?
Agnosticism. I think it's hang on, let me try and
Not BP and not B, not P.
I think it's something like that.
I can give you a paper on it that has it as well.
That would be good. Let me try and find it. It might be hard.
Yeah. See what you got for me, and I'm curious what you're trying to figure out what I'm writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The way you look at it this way, a proposition, right, is P, God exists, right?
Yep.
Predicate would be belief. So BP would be believes P. B, not P, would be believes not P. So not B and not P would be I do not believe not B, right? That's it. You just read it like you would English.
Very cool.
I got a lot of questions. Holy crap.
Yeah, it seems like we do. I mean,
explain the difference between Gnostic atheism and strong atheism. Strong atheism is merely the belief that gods do not exist. Gnostic atheism would be taking that one step higher and saying that not only do I just not believe there are no gods, I'm claiming it as a knowledge claim. Gnostic atheism and strong atheism are completely different. Now, Gnostic atheism would require strong atheism, if you think about it, because clearly, if knowledge is a subset of belief, you have to believe there are no gods before I can even modify that further with knowledge. Okay.
There was a question with Mr. Crust. When believe means pretend, how does that change the equation? I don't think it does.
Well, when believe means pretend, you're talking about equivocation.
Yeah.
You're not talking about epistemology in that case, right? Yeah. So you gotta be careful of equivocation. Soul Watcher 72. Steve, can you recommend any great books on philosophy? Go to my not books. Well, I guess I have some books in there. www.greatdebatecommunity.com /citations. I don't have a link for it on the main page yet. I need to put one on there. But that has has all the papers I've read and things that I've read that I've collected over last couple of years. Not all of them by any means, but it's quite a few chunk of it.
It says that page can't be found.
I'll put it in the live chat for it. Maybe that's not what I named it. Oh, it's list of citations. Oh no, here, this is why I can't find it. I'll put in the live chat for you.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Looking.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than I guess.
Found it.
All right, so that's my little citation list. Not exhaustive by any stretch of imagination, but there's some good stuff in there. And there's one page in there that actually, and I just found this recently, actually, kind of surprising. I think it's the epistemology of belief and the epistemology and degrees of belief from the American Philosophical Quarterly. I think that paper uses the same predicate logic that I'm using. I think that's the one. So by Richard Foley. So check that out.
That's fair. You got SEP, IEP, Dr. Paul Draper, Dr. Graham Opie, Dr. Jane Friedman. That's actually pretty decent.
Yeah, she's from New York University. She wrote Suspending Judgment. Actually, 2 papers on suspending judgment. I do read these things.
Dr. Sosa, I don't think I've heard of him.
Sosa wrote a paper called Coherence Theory and Justification Theory, the Raft and the Pyramid. Very complicated paper. I got through about 2-3 pages into it and it was done. Sosa is not an easy read. Yeah, and I like reading about coherence theory and justification. I couldn't get much out of that paper. The only thing I remember that I did glean from that paper that I thought was interesting was he was talking about what's called Methodism versus particularism. And it's fascinating because the difference between Methodism and particularism is how we approach epistemological claims. So there's 2 ways we can look at things. We can say, how do we know this, and what do we know? Right. So one way looks at it as how do we know something is true, and then by that, what do we know? And the other one looks at the converse and says, what do we know, and then how do we know it? So, and I don't remember which one's which. I think it's particularism starts with how we know, but anyways, if you read that paper for Sosa, that's in there, which I thought was interesting. I hadn't looked at it that way before.
So what kind of citation method do you use? Do you use Harvard? Do you use?
I got an A+ in MLA, but I just copy and paste what's there.
MLA, okay.
Yeah, I took college English, and we had to do MLA, and I aced it, but I was very boring. I'm not citing this for any papers, so I'm not going to use MLA formatting, though.
That's a fair call.
I know what it is. What about Dr. Malik? Yeah, I have Dr. Malik in there as well. I read it.
Yeah, Dr. S.A. Malik.
I talked to Malik. I've talked to Malik a few times. I just got to get back to him. But the problem is he lives in the Arab countries, and you know what? They don't even allow Skype.
Jeebus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I very difficult to really communicate with him if you can't really talk to him.
So what does he do? WhatsApp or something?
He's a biochemist professor.
Okay.
But he clearly knows philosophy. Steve, you've got to speak more on the other streams you're invited to. Sometimes I see you quiet when you're the man that should be talking. Like what streams? I get, first of all, I get shut down quite a bit. Let's be realistic. This is the only channel I can come on where I can actually be eloquent or have elocutionary force, where I can talk about things and explain to people what I like to talk about without being shut down every 5 seconds.
And no, that's a fair call. And yeah, this is your channel. That's why I've been quiet for the most part, because I wanted to learn from you.
Tom says, random question. What do you think of gauge theory and symmetry at 4 pi? Gauge theory I'll accept for SUS2. I think that there's the symmetry for particles would use gauge SU2, I believe, maybe SU3, Tom. But I don't know what the symmetry at 4 pi would be. I hate gauge theory. I did a thing on Galois theory not long ago, though, by changing the fields. So you're out of the reals, but you started doing a new field where instead of 1 + 1 = 2, 1 + 1 = 0, because your field is only 0, 1, 2, and 3. So that's called Galois theory.
What the?
Man, we just go all over the place here. See, you got to be up on a whole bunch of topics when you do these kind of things, because people ask you all kinds of weird questions, right? And obviously, I'm not looking anything up. I don't have time to sit there and Google shit like people think that I do.
No.
And even if I did, how fast can you memorize something off Wiki? You know?
Well, yeah, that's true. And I'm going to be honest. I have only just fairly recently left the faith, so my mind is only just opening up. So I know pretty much.
That's awesome, though. No. See, I love that though, because you want to learn. You want to understand these things. Like I'll give you an example, and let me read this out first, then I'll give you an example.
Yep.
Kiwase, my friend, says, well, your critics tend to call these hangouts an echo chamber, and well, call us cronies too, so we share your pain, which is funny because I have so many people come in with differing opinions, right? I don't think they understand what echo chamber is generally used for, right? I don't shut down conversations because people disagree with me. I'm thrilled to. This is why I have Godless Atheist on. He didn't agree with me on things. I'm happy to have conversations with people that don't agree with me. I want to have those conversations. Maybe I'm wrong. Fix me. If not, maybe I can impart some information, right? I don't believe in this. Oh, well, you're just thinking I'm wrong. Let's block you. I've never done that. I've never blocked anybody because they've said I'm wrong. I block people because they're arrogant little pricks who thinks that they've never read a paper and they're going to tell me I'm wrong 5 million times by messaging me the same shit every day. At that point, you're just trolling. I don't want to deal with you, right? Not you, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I block people because, and the only reason why I do is because, one, they're filled with anger, like absolute hatred. I can see it in their typing. And two, I can tell by the way that they type that they just don't want to learn. They want to be right. They just want to be constantly right, and they don't want to be corrected.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, they think that they're arguing against something that I'm not actually arguing, right? And it's easier to argue against a straw man. People that actually know my arguments for years, they don't generally give me much pushback any longer because my arguments have stood up over time. What happens is somebody new will just take away what they think that the argument is and go, oh, well, Steve's arguing this. And people are going, no, that's not what Steve's saying. And so it's very easy to fight against, for somebody to argue a straw man, but it's very difficult to try to argue against a straw man, right? Because I'm spending more of my time defending something that I'm not actually promoting, right? So,
exactly. Yeah. And that way, I just say, look, that's not my argument. Please stick on topic. That's all I say.
Yeah, good old Crick. Oh, I do remember that guy. That guy was a huge troll. He's still around, I think, by the way.
Who?
A guy named Good Old Crick. He was a huge troll in the Great Debate community and just completely was just a huge troll. I mean, he got kicked out of the community and I didn't want anything to do with him because, again, after a certain point, you're just like, look, if you can't even tell me anything about the topic, you're not in a position to sit there and critique me the way you think. Not saying that I'm an expert by any means, but I'm at least trying to learn. I'd rather have somebody who's learning. Even if you said, hey, Steve, I read this paper the other day and I think I gleaned this out of it. Let's go over it. I'd be thrilled to, right? I'd be like, okay, let's check it out, right? You don't have to be an expert.
No, that's true. And you know what? I like people like that. I like people that will sit down, go through it. And when I give something like a hypothesis or something like that, something that I think might be true, and they can just sit down and go no or yes and explain why through A to Z. I love those type of people, and I want to be around those type of people.
So let me ask you this. So somebody just put this in the live chat, and let me let you try to correct them. They said that Gnostic and agnostic is a dichotomy, and theist and atheist is a dichotomy. Is that correct?
No.
So, and I didn't really tell you what a true dichotomy is, and I probably should, so you know how to fight against this. When somebody says atheism, theism, and dichotomy, they're fundamentally flawed about logic. And what's happening is a dichotomy would be something along the lines of A or not A. Okay, that's called the law of excluded middle. Okay. And what happens if you instantiate A with something? Let's say theist. You have theist or not theist. That is a dichotomy, right? Yeah. But what they're doing is saying, oh, I'm just going to take not theist. I'm going to change that to atheist. And now I have not theist equals atheist. So therefore I have the dichotomy between theist and atheism. It doesn't work that way. Now, granted, you can do that. I'm not going to say it's illogical to do that, but it creates a dichotomy that you don't find in philosophy and presents a whole bunch of other epistemic issues like absurdities of rocks being atheist. It also creates category errors dealing with cognitivists. But yeah, an actual dichotomy, because I think that's more of a semantic game, but an actual dichotomy would be theist or not theist. That's a dichotomy.
George,
George doesn't know what he's talking about.
No, he's only doing atheist and theist. He's not looking at
P and not. See what he just said. He just said P and not P is binary.
No.
Okay, put that put a proposition in there. God exists and God does not exist. I'm sorry. God exists or God does not exist. That's binary, right?
Yeah.
I believe God exists or I do not believe God exists. That's binary. Those are dichotomies. Theism and atheism is not a dichotomy because one is the belief that God exists, one is the belief that God does not exist. Those are called contraries. Again,
Yeah, I was just about to say it's contraries and contradictories.
yeah, they're contradictories. Yes, not contraries. Yeah, good call.
Yeah,
But
and
see,
he's
he
missing
wasn't getting it.
Yeah, no, he's missing the intricacies.
Right, but this is what I deal with all the time, right? If you think that atheism and theism are a dichotomy, okay, go demonstrate it to me. Go find a paper that demonstrates that to me. You're not going to be able to find one because it's just not the way it is.
Mm.
Yeah.
No. This is where it's going to get fun, because you brought up the rocks are atheist thing, and you and we've gone through it quite incessantly.
I think you changed your position on that eventually, though, didn't you? I know Jim Majors did. He was a rock atheist at first, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is kind of stupid."
Yeah, rocks are not atheists. Rocks are not theists. They're not even conscious of the ability to decide. So how can they be or be not?
Because what happens is if somebody just says that atheism is equal to non-theism as a dichotomy, as George is trying to do, it has to be by entailment that rocks are atheist. That's one of the absurdities it leads to. You can't get out of that.
Yeah, I mean,
think about this. A dichotomy means you have to be one group or the other.
Yeah, exactly.
A rock is either a theist or a rock is not a theist, right? And just they don't hold beliefs, they're not theist. Now, I'm just changing the word not theist to equal atheist, is what George is doing, because making a dichotomy. Now rocks are atheist according to him. To be consistent, he has to acknowledge it. That's why Bionic Dance for years has been putting out this narrative, rocks are atheist, because she at least understands by saying non-theist equals atheist, then rocks have to be atheist. She's right on that. The logic is correct if she uses that way, but I find that to be an absurdity to say
rocks are not theist, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, they're not. Yeah, but to me, they're not atheist either. That's absurd. When you ask somebody what your beliefs are, right? We don't want to know what the hell you have in common with a rock, right? You say I lack a belief, or a rock lacks a belief. Okay, so what? Is that really going to be helpful to me? That tells me anything about you that you share something with a rock? No, I want to know what your actual beliefs are. I want to know what you think is the state of the situation or of the universe.
Yeah, non-theist must be atheist. David Friskin. Yeah.
Non-theist does not have to be atheist. In philosophy, non-theist is somebody who doesn't hold a God belief.
Yeah, and
well, let me ask you this. Let me, God, so when the people are talking about this,
this hurts my brain.
Does anybody not agree? And this is the live chat. Does anybody not agree that the most commonly held position, and this is going to be part of my talk tomorrow, my debate, the most commonly held position, or that what it should be ought to be understood when you see the word atheist in the philosophical literature, is the position that gods do not exist? Is there anybody who does not agree with that? Because those are the ones that are the far extremists that I need to reach out to, because I don't know anybody in the right mind that knows philosophy would disagree with me on that. So if you're that far gone, then you're the person I want to have a conversation with, because that may require evidence. I have the evidence. I guarantee you don't have the evidence. That's what's going to happen tomorrow in the debate, because he's not going to have the evidence to support what he thinks he's trying to support. I do. You know, but I'm just curious if anybody thinks that in philosophy that's not how it is.
George, I don't care about definitions as long as you describe your beliefs.
Yeah, these are not definite. Again, we're not really concerned about definitions. We're concerned about concepts, right? When I first told Godless earlier, I said, look, you can label yourself anything you want. You can define anything you want, but it is still a material fact that if you do not hold a belief either way and just spend judgment, that's called in philosophy referred to as or understood as being agnostic on P. That's a material fact. Yeah. Steve, does A mean not without theism? No. A is held to be not, as in the negation of theism, and you can't go by the etymological history of the word. So what that means is if you have theism is that God exists, then the negation of that is God does not exist. So it's not without, although gods, obviously atheists are without gods, but to be the negator there, A is not believe, or excuse me, believes not the case, or believes that gods do not exist. Oh, who's trying to get in here?
Okay, so would I be?
Try to come in. All right, whatever.
I haven't shared the link, so I don't
I
know.
didn't either. That's why I thought it was weird.
So am I a in a contrary or a contradictory when I say that I am an agnostic?
What do you mean? That's neither. Well, what agnostic would be a second order belief.
Second order belief. Okay.
Yeah. What that means is there's there's two beliefs you can have on the proposition that are direct. Believe it's true, believe it's false.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't have either one of those, then you're something else. It's a second order position, meaning that I have a belief that I can't answer either way. It's a second order belief.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So agnosticism is merely a second order belief about your beliefs on a proposition.
Okay.
And that's the way Malpass explains it well. And I like that. So agnosticism is a belief about beliefs because you're believing that you don't have a belief either way. You can't substantiate either one. You can't justify it.
Okay. So then I would say officially that I have a second order belief that I am agnostic.
Well, you have
correct?
You believe you're agnostic, which is a second order belief.
Okay. Yeah. So how would I say it officially without, making people turn their necks?
I'm agnostic. When somebody says, "Well, what's your stance on the God claim?" I'm agnostic.
Okay.
That should tell a person who understands it that you just haven't made a decision either way. You're suspending judgment on it.
Okay. And would it also be fair to say that I am a weak atheist?
If you want to, I don't. The reason being is that while it technically would be the case, if you want to use that terminology, I find it leads to epistemic confusion because you're also a weak theist. All agnostics are weak atheist and weak theist. If then that's the case. So what's the point? What's the value that it adds? It doesn't add any information by saying, well, yeah, I'm a weak atheist, but I'm also a weak theist. People look at you like that doesn't make sense, but it does make sense. That's actually what it is.
Yeah.
So I just avoid it altogether because it just leads to confusion.
Okay. That sounds like a fair thing. Yeah. So I am agnostic straight out then.
Yeah. Well, welcome to my world.
Okay.
Kathy says, what do you think of Richard Dawkins' scale of theistic probability? Did you read my last, I normally include my last post in the description, but I cleared everything out because I was going to see if this one got demonetized or not because just of all the crap going on. But I wrote a blog on that the other day. I'll put it right there called Why the Dawkins Scale for Atheism and Theism is, well, basically crap. Yeah. And what's funny is I got so much good response on this blog, and it was mostly all from atheists. I was really surprised. A lot of atheists go, man, yeah, that scale sucks. I'm like, yeah, I know. But read my blog on the Dawkins scale because the Dawkins scale is so bad. Most atheists I know don't use it for so many different reasons.
Oof.
We can go over that in another hangout if you guys want. Sean Carroll, do you want not this particular hangout, but another hangout? Do you want me to go over that blog entry? Usually I do. I read a blog and then I go on the channel to discuss it. That's kind of what my channel is anymore. It's kind of my channel and blog and great debate. But if you guys want that, then it is. Well, you know what? I don't mind if opening it now. Do you want to open it up a little bit?
Sure, definitely. I was actually just reading it anyway. The scale actually rather confuses me because I'm on two different parts of the scale. I'm on a pure agnostic, and I'm also, according to this, de facto atheist.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything as a pure agnostic. I mean, the way he makes it, he basically marginalizes it and to point of non-existence because nobody's 50%. That's just, yeah, it makes no sense for me to do it that way.
Yeah, I thought so. The moment I looked at it, I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. He's generalizing to a certain degree.
Well, and he's making it so specific to be of nominal consequence. I mean, what person has exactly 50-50?
I don't think anyone does. I really don't.
Right. I don't think so either. I mean, I tend one to the side or the other too. So, I mean, nobody's 50-50.
David, some can claim 50-50, but if you dig down a little bit deeper, you'll find that they're ever so slightly skewed or ascribing to one or the other more strongly than the other. Yeah,
and it could be a change of day to day, right? I mean, one day you could be like, yeah, maybe I do think there's a God, or more likely there's a God, and one day a little bit less. But, as long as you don't reach that threshold where you're convinced. And by the way, I don't think that we convince ourselves. I think that we're convinced and then our minds catch up to it, right? I firmly believe that in most cases, The mind does all the work. The mind says, yeah, I'm convinced now. And then we recognize that we're convinced. We don't consciously say, yes, I've convinced myself of this. Okay, so put the link out there. Come on in.
Yeah, Lucky just made a very unique comment. Christians say 50-50.
About what?
I don't know. That's just what they said.
Yeah.
Anybody
can join, links out there. I mean, I'll have to verify you, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh, here's one from Les Nagy. I'm butchering the name.
Les Nagy. Yeah.
Yeah, 50-50 may be fear-induced. And to a large degree, I do actually agree with that. 50-50 can be fear-induced.
There's a lot of things that we do by fear induction, I think, actually. I was just reading something on that not long ago. How fear affects us on certain beliefs.
Yeah. Actually, when I left the faith, that's partially why I stuck to being agnostic. Because I hopelessly, like a fool that I was, wanted to try and still keep talking to those people. But because of what I did, which was frowned upon, I was pushed back. I was negated from that community.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because again, like, well, I see it all the time, right? People like if you hold agnostic, even if you have the same exact concepts, right? You and I have the same exact concepts. Other people do as well. If you don't take that label, for some reason, you're not one of them. It's weird, even though we have the exact same beliefs. But Kathy says Matt also spoke about belief being binary, that you believe or you don't, which is true. Where does pantheism fall in your perspective? Is it theism or atheism? Tom Jump. I generally put it as atheistic. Pantheism can be either one, but to me, when you're talking about something along the lines of a universal God that is the universe, especially when it comes to like Spinoza's God or the God of philosophers, yeah, it's atheistic. It doesn't really, to me, reach the level of what I would consider to be a supernatural deity or an anthropomorphic deity or even something with a conscience. That's not theism to me.
No, it's not.
But again, these are philosophical things. People can look at things differently.
Exactly, and I've been looking at Spinoza's God recently, actually. I know it's going to sound stupid, but it does make some sense.
Oh yeah, no, that's not stupid. I have affinity towards Spinoza's God.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't take it as a theistic thing. To me, when I'm looking at certain things, when the philosophical things for God, the God of the philosophers, there's an elegance there. There's a mathematical elegance. There's the things that we harmonize between music and mathematics and science and waves, and it's just, if you want to call that, what they would call God, I'm okay with that. Michio Kaku does, but they're not using the God term as a theistic God. They're using it as, there's just something that is what I think beyond our comprehension to understand why there's so much symmetry the way there is.
Exactly, and that's what I think.
It's beauty, aesthetics. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I believe there's something out there, but I can't pin it down to a being because beings are quite fallible. Beings are quite erroneous, and we screw up quite a fair bit. So I can't pin it down to a being. More so, I think it's a non-sentient as in sentient as in human being.
Yeah. Non-physical, non-sentient. It's more conceptual to me.
Yeah, conceptual.
Well, I mean, Sean Carroll calls it poetic naturalism. Yeah. Even Tom Jump refers it to like naturalistic pantheism. So something that doesn't require necessarily a personal aspect of the universe, but it's something that on a personal level you find beauty in the way the universe is. There's an awe that, just because you understand the science.
I think that's fine though. I don't have an issue with that. Matter of fact, I got done having a discussion in one of the groups about spiritualism, right? One of the admins was like, you can't be spiritually atheist. And even the atheists were like, the fuck you can't. They're like, one is not comprised of the other. You can be a fully atheist, believe there's no gods. You can be an anti-theist and still be a spiritual person, because spiritualism is related to how you live your life in harmony with things and in relationship to things. If you are a very compassionate, empathetic person, you're very giving, you're very altruistic, you're very trying to enjoy humanity and enjoy the beauty of the universe, I could take that as spiritual. I'm okay with that.
I mean, my question would be to them: why do you equivocate like that? I mean, what does the spirit have to do with belief?
Well, because these terms are used differently, right? And so to a theist, when they say spiritual, they're meaning it differently. So the atheist goes, "Oh, I don't want to use it that way." Well, then you're not. When an atheist says they're spiritual, they're not using it the way a theist would be using it necessarily. So, and to think otherwise is equivocation. We're allowed to use words as atheists and agnostics that may differ than how a theist uses it, and we shouldn't be afraid to do that, especially at the word belief. When people, and even Matt had made a video on this, telling atheists, stop saying you don't believe things, you make it look like an idiot. But you still have a lot of atheists who think that, oh, I'm an epistivist, and I am somebody who doesn't hold any beliefs, and I don't believe anything unless I have justification. Bullshit. Flat out bullshit.
I think
you can get them to an actual philosopher, and the philosopher's going to look at them like, what the fuck are you talking about? We have beliefs all the time we don't justify.
There's also an aspect of a kind of new age spiritualism that doesn't ground itself in any type of kind of theistic or religious aspects, but it seems that there's a certain type of person that still has a desire for kind of an afterlife or some sort of kind of mystical understanding. So when they look at even aspects of science, they still consider it spiritual because they think it can still bring about some sort of afterlife for them. I think it's still, there's a huge psychological component involved in the way people define spiritual. And a lot of atheists, when they talk spiritual, they do understand, look, there's no afterlife, there's nothing there, there's nothing personal, but I just find beauty in the world that I live in. And there's like people that have this new age idea, like Deepak Chopra, in the sense that they really, even though they don't believe in Yahweh or any type of religious understanding, they still have kind of this desire that, there has to be something more. There has to be something more. And this is a distinction between, say, maybe a complete naturalist or an atheist and someone that's spiritual, and then also someone that's theistic. Right.
I agree with that, actually. And here's the thing. IEP will actually say one of the things for atheism can include naturalism. Now, I particularly don't hold to that. I think there are different propositions. I reject that from the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I think that that's too broad a way of describing it. Again, philosophy, we're allowed to say these things. The problem is that you can be an atheist and not be a naturalist. Matt Dillahunty is a methodological naturalist. He's not an ontological naturalist, So the converse is true. If you're a methodological naturalist, right? If you're an ontological naturalist or a philosophical naturalist, you have to be an actual strong atheist. You can't get away from that. What it does actually entail, I actually have a proof for that. If somebody doesn't believe me, but it's kind of self-evident, right? If you believe there's no supernatural, clearly there are no gods, in your opinion, right? You can't say I think all is natural, but there's a supernatural God that exists. That's a contradiction there.
Yeah, that's a full-on contradiction.
Right.
That doesn't make sense to me. I think I'm gonna tread the dangerous waters here. But before I do, Kendall Man wanted to say something after me. He wanted to. It's in chat there. But for me, the way that supernatural has been explained by the theists, the Abrahamic religion theists, and I'm more in line with the Druidic theists, if there's such a thing, the Druidic following of the supernatural.
Okay, and real quick, Jamfer, and I'll answer your question another time. Ozzy and I are going to have a hangout on the particular topic. He says, what's the difference? He says, thoughts on the difference between theological and cognitivism and agnostic. Ozzy and I have been trying to get together to have a discussion on that very topic. We have a little bit of different way of looking at things, and we're going to try to suss that out. But I think there's a distinction to be made between them. And I generally go with Hoyt's side, I think. So Steve Hoyt, if you know who he is. Okay. Yeah. Contrary to popular belief, I don't hang on Ozzy's word where if Ozzy says it, I have to believe it. No, I do disagree with him on certain things. And we have great talk. Those are our best discussions, though. We would talk for hours on things that we don't necessarily agree. But the things that we don't necessarily agree don't necessarily have a right answer, right?
No, they don't.
So
That's the great part of philosophy.
So Steve, I consider myself a strong atheist, but I consider you, highly intelligent, highly rational person. And when you consider yourself an agnostic, I feel like I'm missing something. Is there something I'm missing as an atheist? Like if I call myself a strong atheist just because, I think I have good reasons that there's absolutely no rational reason to believe in a God. But I feel in some way that I'm missing something because I do value, your view on things, and I do think you're a smart person.
I don't
So
think you're missing anything.
the way you make the distinction between agnosticism and atheism, it almost feels like it must entail that in some way atheists are missing something. Like
No.
we're in some way irrational because we don't think. I'm
Yeah,
not
I
trying to
understand your
straw
question,
man
but
it,
no, I don't think that you are, and let me explain why.
Agnostics have cookies.
I perfectly agnostics have great cookies. I really think that you can be perfectly justified to be a strong atheist. I have no issue with that. I'm all for that. Okay. The difference between you and I is that I have my life that I've experienced, and you have your life, your experiences, right? We have to weigh, we do weigh in those things when we make evaluations for beliefs, right? My
Right.
brain hasn't convinced me yet because of personal experiences that there are no gods, right? Or that my
No. I would never question what you believe. I don't think belief is something we would choose. Like,
Right.
our beliefs are not
So
a
you're not
choice,
missing
in my
anything. I just
opinion.
happened. I'm just at the stage where I'm agnostic on these propositions. I'm not.
So
I'm
you
not
wouldn't
faulting
say
of somebody for being atheist by any stretch of the
so would you say we could have the exact same information, but just based on our experiences, we could come to different conclusions? So it's not something that maybe I'm lacking, something that that I don't know.
Yes.
But okay.
And not just that, I'll add one step further. It's not just our personal experiences, but also I think each individual person has their own quote unquote line of demarcation of where that levels reach where we say I'm convinced. Right. Like Godless Atheist, he might have a much higher threshold than I do to be convinced of somebody. And again, we see this all the time. For example, Tom here, right? I've known Tom for a long time. And Steve says, "Hey, Steve, I went out and bought a puppy yesterday." I'm going to be convinced that he got a puppy, right? Because I've known him long enough. We have a good rapport. I don't need to question that. I don't doubt that. My mind's going to say, yes, he's established enough rapport with me that I'm going to be convinced that that's something that I don't need to question, right? But, Tom says, hey, I was abducted by aliens. I'm going to be like, I believe that maybe he experienced something, right? But I'm going to question whether that was the actual event that happened. But there's other people out there that might say something, even to the still, that they might get a puppy, and I think they're the most dishonest person in the world. I'm going to question everything they tell me at certain points, because they're just demonstrable liars. So the threshold has to change just because we have information about some things. My information about Tom gives me a different threshold for him than say something like G-Man. When G-Man tells me something,
aren't probabilities also based on
they're pretty close.
Aren't probabilities also based on things that are plausible? So in the sense that we understand that it is, humans, getting a pet is something that is
we see
plausible.
That frequently, right?
So even though they might be lying and you might not believe them, you still understand there's a possibility, right?
Yeah, there's a possibility he could have got abducted by aliens too, right?
So I'd like
if he tells me he created a square circle or an over-unity device, I'm going to tell him I don't believe you. I think you're lying or wrong or mistaken. I believe that he's wrong. I will hold that belief right off the bat because my level of requirement to convince me of something like that is so high that Tom just telling me that I'm not going to hold a belief. I'm going to have the opposite because I believe those are impossible. So he needs to convince me that my belief is wrong.
So can I give you my really very quick kind of reason why I consider myself a strong atheist? Sure. Just really quick rundown, like just because everything I've studied, looked into, every single instance of a deity or a god, any kind of account has come from stories, ancient stories, ancient accounts, and the way I see kind of modern humans developing ideas of gods, I see them as very advanced. Yes, our modern philosophical description of gods, the ways that certain people kind of put gods into certain aspects of creating the universe, things like that. They're very advanced. They're very intelligent. These are not stupid people. But in a way, I still see them as nothing more than modern stories that are just extrapolation of the ancient stories we're telling. And every time I look for God, the only place I see a God is in a story, whether it be a very sophisticated modern story or a very ancient story. So I don't see a God anywhere except in stories. So this is my problem. My personal issue is that I just don't see gods in any other place but in kind of stories humans tell each other. Yeah,
That's a fine
this is kind
justification.
of my hang up. Like there's not, I just can't get beyond that. Like I haven't experienced anything. I haven't found any other evidence, like kind of objective, kind of where everyone has been able to test something, like kind of a supernatural effect on kind of the physical world or anything else. Like just the concept of gods have just seemed to be completely isolated in stories. And granted, modern stories are highly advanced, highly intellectual, but they're still stories. Like, am I wrong in
No, I think
having that outlook?
I think a justification is fine. I think a lot more beyond that though, and I think I think there might be a reason why there's these stories, right? I mean, there might be a plausible reason why there might be some deity. By the way, if there is a God, I don't think he's like anything that anybody's ever experienced.
No, of course, no,
Yeah.
no, I see that.
So I think what happens is that if he ever did speak to somebody in some way or whatever it was, people will take away wrong information about it because there's just no way to comprehend it. So even if the Bible, there's parts of it that's true where there actually was a God, people got crap wrong about it. I do believe that. If that was the case, I can't imagine them getting it right because I don't buy the narrative that the Holy Ghost dictated the Bible because there's so much wrong in it.
Right. No, that's fair.
So,
hey guys, I wanted to share my thoughts about something. So
yeah, I just wanted to get in so Candleman so it could actually have a chat. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of.
I didn't want to be rude. So
No,
I was
not at all.
I was and still am a long time listener of the atheist experience, and Matt Dillahunty had a huge effect on how I viewed evidence and my argumentation strategies. And because of that, because I didn't have any contradicting views, I really agreed with that whole show's idea that the whole agnostic, Gnostic plus atheism, theism system worked. Like I thought it accurately mapped to the different beliefs people had about God. So I chose to take on the agnostic atheist value. Now it took longer than I'd like it to get out of this when I heard contrary information, but I was on a Reddit thread and somebody was arguing with me about it, and only later did I finally get convinced. But essentially the thing that stopped me from using that system was that Gnostic and agnostic refer to very different things when attached to either theism or atheism. So people say, right, Gnostic, a Gnostic theist is a theist who is convinced God does exist. An agnostic theist is a theist who is not entirely convinced, isn't sure, but still believes in God.
I don't think that's what they actually. That generally is not how they're held, even in the atheist experience community. The way they would say it would be a agnostic theist would be somebody who believes there's no gods but does not claiming it as knowledge, and a Gnostic theist would be somebody who's believing there's God, but is claiming it as knowledge.
Sorry, did you say a Gnostic theist believes there's no gods, or did you miss?
No. A person who is agnostic theist would believe there's a God, but not stating it as knowledge. And then a Gnostic theist would be somebody who believes there's no God, or somebody believes there's a God, but is stating it as knowledge.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I've heard it referred to both ways. I think.
So have I. No, it's not like you messed up. I've heard it both ways. I've heard it many different ways. I have a whole blog explaining the different ways, but I'm just telling you, I think that how the atheist experience would use it in that context.
Yeah, I think what you said is definitely more accurate. So an agnostic atheist would be somebody who doesn't believe a God exists, but doesn't know no God exists. So the knowledge in that case refers to a different claim than the knowledge when you're attaching it to theism, right? Like a Gnostic theist knows there is a God, and a Gnostic atheist knows there is no God. But an agnostic atheist is kind of a combination of both. It's that the atheist.
Let's help you out here a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to put into it.
So the difference, if you're just going to take the term atheist, right? An atheist is somebody who believes in no gods. That's what we call a dostastic position. It's just somebody making a belief claim. Okay, there's nothing that is constitutive of that implies knowledge. Just say I believe that it's 3 o'clock. I'm not making the claim that it's not. I know it's 3 o'clock. I'm only making the belief claim. You can modify that to knowledge. You can say, look, I just know. It's not that I just don't hold a belief, that I hold the belief that it's 3 o'clock, but I actually know it's 3 o'clock. So a theist or an atheist, either one of them, can say, well, yeah, I believe that God exists, but I also know that God exists. If I know that God exists, I have to also believe that God exists. Now, the problem is now you have atheists and agnostics, both of them claiming knowledge. One of them is mistaken. Knowledge cannot be false. There's no such thing as false knowledge.
Well, let me see if I can put it this way.
Actually, both of them could be mistaken too.
let me see if I can put it this way. A Gnostic theist and an agnostic theist, the theist part is the same, right? It's the belief that there is a God,
okay.
And the Gnostic or agnostic part is the knowledge about that belief.
Well, again, you can infer many different things. Have you read my blog on this?
Isn't an agnostic theist just an agnostic?
Yeah, no, but no. I'm trying to talk about how it's used.
An agnostic theist is just a theist. I don't see any. I've asked this question a million times. What is the distinguishing factor between a agnostic theist and just a theist? There's no difference, as anybody's ever told me.
Let me see if I can get through it just all the way through, and then if you can criticize what I have. So the way I see it is that a Gnostic. So the word Gnostic or agnostic applies to the belief that a theist has, and it is an indicator of their knowledge about that belief. When you attach agnostic to atheism, the word agnostic refers to their confidence not on their lack of belief. Like it doesn't make sense to me for somebody to be a Gnostic atheist, because Gnostic should be referring to the belief claim held in the term atheism, the same way that it applies to theism when Gnostic is attached to that.
Well, how do you hold atheism? I mean, currently, how do you hold atheism? Is the belief that gods don't exist?
Currently, yeah, it's the belief that gods don't.
Right, so you disagree with you?
Yes, I disagree with
the experience.
But
by the way, they hate the fact that people are learning this. They have actually. I have people in my live chat. They've actually kicked out of their live chat before.
Yeah.
I know.
I've discarded both terms because of more social reasons, and I'll get into that in a sec if I have time. But so essentially, when I hear or Gnostic atheism, to me, if I use the terms in the same way that I hear Gnostic theism, it would be knowledge that you lack a belief.
Yeah, which doesn't make much sense.
May I?
I mean, it's true. I mean, you know that you lack a belief, but does it really form you of anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
May I throw a monkey wrench in here?
Oh, are you going to do that? Are you going to mention quantum?
No. I will mention Huxley and agnostics.
I'm not. Yeah.
As I am, and I think, well, it might complicate things, but on the other hand, it gives you an opportunity to address this question as well. Huxley and agnostics, if you break it down, make a belief claim about a knowledge claim. Huxley and agnostic, as I am, says, I believe that we cannot know about the proposition of does God exist or does God not exist. So it's unknowable.
Correct.
So that's a little bit stronger than a pure agnostic, but it has to do about knowledge. And very often when I hear you, Steve McRae, talk about the topic about agnosticism, I feel not addressed because I'm making a belief claim about a knowledge claim, but you are saying agnosticism is not about knowledge; it is about belief.
Well, hang on.
Yeah.
This is where we're not going to disagree on this, but the problem is that you have an equivocation issue. What you said is completely correct. Okay, but let me try to explain it this way. The word agnosticism has multiple usages, and I wrote a blog on this called Agnosticism 3 Ways, and I explained the difference between what's called an epistemic normative principle, an epistemological proposition, and a psychological state. This is critical that somebody has to understand these three. And I'm going to be getting into this in my debate tomorrow. But an epistemic normative principle would have been Huxley's way of looking at things for a scientific method, right? He was a logical positivist for all practical purposes. He was an evidentialist. So the method he used, when he said that agnosticism is a method, he's talking about evidentialism in a way. So that is one way. That's the archaic version of agnosticism. We're not referring to that, right? The way you're using it is the epistemological proposition. And that proposition is not the proposition on the ontology of God's existence. It's the proposition of can we know if God's exist, right? That's an epistemological question, not an ontological one.
Right.
So when we're talking about epistemological questions, then yes, agnosticism in your terms for Huxley would be that proposition. And so you would say that the proposition is true. If I said that we cannot know God's exist, you would, as a Huxleyan or agnostic, you think that proposition is true. I don't.
Yeah,
I don't say that.
That would be my belief.
Right. But that's fine. You can use agnosticism that way. That's not. I never had an issue with that. I do understand the difference. When I say that agnosticism doesn't have to acknowledge with respect to theism, right? I'm not saying it. I'm saying very specifically, it doesn't have to do with to the ability to know something. What it has to do is the ontology, right? And the respect with ontology is that agnosticism is not having a belief either way. It has nothing to do with the epistemological proposition, which is a separate proposition. We're dealing with the proposition here of God's existence. So agnosticism with respect to the proposition of theism is merely, do you believe one way or another? And if you don't, then you're agnostic on it. But if you want to go, are God's knowledgeable, and you want to talk about the epistemological proposition, then that's a different question entirely. Does that make sense, Tom Thompson? So it's not, I'm not saying it doesn't have to acknowledge at all, but with respect to theism, that's where people make the mistake. I'm
just getting the feeling that a lot of people who disagree with you might be like hidden Huxleyan agnostics where they don't even know about it, and they disagree about with you about the I cannot know. They don't properly make the statement like, I have a belief that I cannot know. That would make them a Huxleyan agnostic, but they're just not philosophically well versed to put it in these terms. They just put it in these terms about having knowledge. Since they don't have knowledge, they put themselves into the camp of agnostics. While you are arguing it from a philosophical point of view, and I think there's a lot of attrition going on dealing with these people.
Yeah, absolutely.
From your part,
I'm wondering.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm wondering how you guys feel about using the term agnostic when you're talking to people totally unfamiliar to any of these debates, like, friends, family, people in public.
I use it all the time when people ask me. I have these conversations in real life.
So there's a reason I don't call myself an agnostic or an atheist. I use the term non-theist because I feel like it's a lot more clear. But the reason I don't use agnostic, and why I think I was so excited to hear the atheist experience, Matt's idea, was because I didn't need to use the word agnostic anymore. But I wasn't an atheist. So when I was coming out of Judaism in high school, I would use the term agnostic, and it was very clear to me that what everyone around me was hearing was that I was just confused. I was like on the fence, but I wasn't an atheist. It's not that I didn't believe in God. That's how they were thinking about it, not the lack of, or not the disbelief. But it was clear that when I used that term, that they thought that there was still hope for me, and the truth was there wasn't at all. Like I
totally empathize with you, brother. I totally get this.
I did not believe that any gods existed, and the evidence was garbage. So I refuse to use that term now, because I feel like outside of these communities, when you use the term agnostic, it's like, oh, this person is just one spiritual feeling away from believing that a God exists. And I think it allows theists to hold on to a portion of society that isn't like against the belief in things without good evidence. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
let me give you my perspective on that, because that's really well said. When you're talking to somebody, you're telling them what you want them to know about you, right? Now, I think non-theism is a very vague term, right? I mean, when people says, do you believe in God? People don't go around saying, well, I'm a theist. They say, well, I'm a Christian, I'm a Mormon, I'm a Jew, whatever. They tell what kind of theist they are. And again, not saying you have to. It's just awkward. Now, most people say they're a non-believer, right? But again, not a big deal. These are self-identifications, labels that you are just using to tell people, you're somewhat of your position. Totally not an issue. I happen to use the agnostic label. You don't have to, but where the disconnect is, and somebody had mentioned this a little while ago in the live chat, they've never heard Matt talk about any of this stuff, right? You won't ever hear any of this information being put out in the Agnostic experience. It doesn't happen. And so because of that, people think that whatever they put out is the golden gospel, that there's no other way of looking at things. And so when I go out and I use the word agnostic, people don't think that's atheist, right? They just don't. They think there's undecided, or in some cases, like you said, they do. Well, it's very, very rare. I can't imagine. I don't think of a time that it actually happened in real life, but it happened on the internet for sure. Many times when people will see me put the word agnostic out and they're like, oh, well, then you're just, wishy-washy, undecided. And I'm like, no, I have a lot of thought invested in this. I assure you.
Yeah. I've heard the phrase on the fence.
Which is fine. I'm a fence center. So is Ozzy.
I have a question based on what you said just real quick. Steve, like you would agree that, theist, atheist, agnostic is kind of specifically in regarding to God, right? You do agree that these terms, yeah. Right? So when you brought up, ontology and metaphysics, do you think that there's kind of an undue kind of credence where we kind of implement God into kind of our axiomatic understandings of ontology and metaphysics? Like we almost, in a sense, use a modern redefinition of the term to redefine God to mean our axioms, our ontology, our understanding of metaphysics in a way that is not really what an average person really understands about God. So when you talk about, like, in my opinion, when I see you talk about being an agnostic and your definition of God or understanding of about God, it's a very ontological, metaphysical understanding, but it's not like really like what meaning does the word have anymore when you use it in that sense?
Well, I mean, the term God is just something that people will define the way they want. Again, when Godless Ozzy got in here, we were going to define God and realize, we don't really need to. It's a concept. We're just talking about a general concept. And if you can't get that part of the conversation, then there's no conversation to be had. But there are a lot of theists out there. A lot of theists believe in their version of a deity, right? You have to be able to have a conversation with them. If not, why are we doing any of this? Right? If you don't have a concept of a God, why are you talking to a theist? That's like saying, I don't know what a car is, but I'm going to go to a NASCAR race and talk, about something that I don't know what that is. That makes no sense to me.
Right. But when you're talking to a theist and you're talking to someone that really, God has an actual influence on the world, where, any type of God you think in terms of theism has a material effect on the world. It interacts with the world, interacts with humans, all this thing. And you have a very kind of ethereal, kind of highbrow understanding of the definition of God, where it's kind of an ontological, axiomatic, metaphysical underpinning of all of reality, which is, in my opinion, something like the average person that considers themselves a theist, this is not their understanding of a God.
Well, they don't
their understanding of a
like
God is like Jesus. It's Yahweh. Right. It's someone that spoke to Moses.
But they don't understand that the concepts of God go back to Thomas Aquinas. That goes back to Hume. Goes back to people
long before that. It goes back to people explaining lightning bolts in the sky.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, if you go to the average person, right, and you ask them what a great making property is, they're gonna have no idea. If you ask them what Thomas Aquinas' 5 ways are, they have no idea. If you ask them what the omni qualities are, no idea, right? They don't get into that, and they could be religious all their lives, right? I know people that are diehard Christians guarantee they wouldn't be able to answer those questions.
But does it have a meaning anymore if you take something that when we start with gods as being explanatory for lightning, weather, things like that, then monotheistic gods, Christian gods, and modern understanding of gods as kind of very ontological, very metaphysical. These continue to be redefinitions of something, and if you can't have a hard definition of something, like what's the meaning of it, right? Because
okay, this is going to get a little technical here if you indulge me. I don't.
No, of course.
Okay,
I'm really curious about your opinion on it.
No, and I love these questions. I don't get asked that much, so let me go into a little bit deeper than I even normally would go into.
Hang on, Steve. I just got to say one thing.
Sure.
Manny,
sorry, but before you say that one thing, I just got to say I'm going to head out. Thanks so much for having me.
Condor, anytime. So Condor, by the way, before you leave though, so I mean, you're watching this program and other shows. I mean, again, Atheist Experience is great. Matt's a great guy. I really have nothing against him. I just think he puts out some misinformation that I wish he really would fix, because a lot of people have tried to explain to him, but I'm not faulting him for it. And I just hope they realize that everything he said about me is not my positions. He's gone on shows and said things that I don't believe, which is really disconcerting, because here's a person that's actually trying to be a communicator, and somebody who says, hey, we need to have conversations, or, labels don't matter, but then he'll make very, very direct fiat statements. Seems to really, like a conformance contradiction to me of sorts, so.
Yeah, I don't
have utmost respect for it.
I don't follow him on any type of social media. All I know is the Atheist Experience. So I don't see anything in the background. All I care about is the arguments for or against God. So anyway, again, thanks for having me.
Buddy. Godless?
Manifold, I like you. We should talk more. that was my comment.
All right, so let me address this. Okay, so one way to look at the deity would be like, I think Seigart's way of doing it, right? And Seigart's, as we know, is a biochemist, PhD biochemist, and he's looking for the ultimate explanation for reality. We're not going to posit it as a scientific explanation, right? I mean, when we're looking at science, we're relegated to methodological naturalism, whether it be quantum fluctuations, whether it be,
it's possible that an underpinning of reality is something that humans, just the way they are, could never have access to. It's kind of like,
well, I believe that. I believe that certain thing about reality forever outside of epistemic limit. But just because there's a level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, whatever, multiverse or whatever, the theist or the philosopher is looking for a root cause for everything, right? They're looking for the grounding. They're looking for the metaphysical necessity, if that's what they're positing, for why everything is. Now, there's two philosophies of school that I don't know if most people never heard of. Well, they heard of one of them, but it's called essentialism, and there's called existentialism. Okay, people hear this term all the time, existentialism, right? They're existentialist. These are very specific meanings in philosophy, and what happened back when, for the essentialist was saying that to be something, it had to have certain properties, right? Let's say like let me think here, a sphere. A property for a sphere is that it's round, right? That is an essential property for a sphere.
By definition.
By mathematical definition, right? But not even the synthetic definitions are required, though. Russell called these things barren tautologies when he defines something. When he says like a triangle has 3 sides, is considered because of a barren tautology by Russell, means that it is defined to be that case, and it doesn't require any action on our part, right? Normally, if you have a definition, the definition for like good, what is the good, has a problem. Okay, we're getting real deep here. Moore's open question argument about how to define good, because if you define good in such a way that's not a barren tautology, then you run into something about what you have to do to be the good. And so how do you define good without implying an action? You can't define it to something like triangles have 3 sides. That's barren tautology. So this essentialism is what makes something what it is. Okay, and I'm trying to think of some other things. Humans, for example, to be human, we have to have certain conditions that make us human.
That can apply to anything in nature, anything we define, a table, chairs. It takes
and some
a certain amount of combination
those are called synthetic. Yeah, those are called synthetic properties. Fine. But the existentialist said that no, the essentialist is wrong. That we don't have any innate things that make us anything. We give ourselves being. We give ourselves meaning. So we can talk about like what we're looking for in meaning, what makes us who we are. But in fact, it's weird because the other day I was out with Brittany Simon, and Brittany Simon asked me, she's like, what makes you you, Steve? What makes Steve Steve? And man, I was taken aback. I had to really think about this, right? Great question, right? I love her. But it's true. What is the essential properties that make Steve Steve? And so the existentialists, which were the Nietzsche's and those guys, Kierkegaard, they really didn't think that there was any essential properties that existed in people or anything in items or objects. Now, I don't know if I subscribe to essentialism, right? I think I do go to more to essentialism, but the problem is essentialism has some issues with some of the other things I believe in, which is like foundationism. But when you
the
ask
way you
for me,
understand evolution, wouldn't you see everything on a spectrum, right? In the way that you wouldn't see someone as the first human, you wouldn't see a real distinction between a certain arrangement of particles to where it becomes a table. Like it takes like there's no last particle that you can put to a certain arrangement where you're going to call it a table and you're not going to call it a table.
Well,
like
that's
it
why
takes a macroscopic view of.
There's no such thing as objects. They're just
rearrangements. So it takes a macroscopic view of everything that we define these things as.
But let me finish because I'm going to.
No, of course, I'm listening. I'm listening.
The reason people posit God is that positing God explains our essential nature. It explains why things have properties. It explains why there is being. It explains things that science isn't ill-equipped to explain. Science can't explain these things. They're metaphysical concepts. So that's why people want to posit a supernatural causation, or they want to posit a deity, because science can never answer these questions. It's ill-equipped to do so.
But Steve, can you see that someone that has that type of understanding, even like yourself, would use the word God to describe a certain kind of ontological, metaphysical element of nature? And like should we even use that? The question is, should we even use the word God to describe that?
And you're right, it could be just a placeholder. I like what Jack just wrote. He said it's a just so story. Yeah, maybe God is a just so story, and people use it as a placeholder.
Right, because when you describe yourself as an agnostic and the way you understand God, maybe that isn't the correct. Maybe your idea of God and your definition of God, maybe it shouldn't be called God. Maybe it should be called something else, because the average person's colloquial idea and definition of God is quite different, maybe than yours.
You know what? This is what we talked about earlier, though, and you missed it. This is what people would say would be the God of philosophers.
Right.
Maybe that would be the
because the confusion and kind of the battle seems to be in this kind of like, there's people that have, they know all the science, they know all the philosophy, they're not really dogmatic about a certain theistic understanding of gods, and they don't subscribe to a certain religion, but they still use the word God because they have they think that word best can describe
they also think that
what
God
they're saying.
They think it's an anthropomorphic being of some kind. They think it has intelligence, right? See, when I use the term God, it may or may not have intelligence.
Right.
I don't know. Now, what you run into is this. This goes to the heart of what's called the argument from contingency. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So there's three real things you can end up with the argument from contingency. You can end up with the fact that it's just an infinite causal regress.
Right.
Well, we hate these things as humans, right? We don't like the thought of an infinite regress, but it's perfectly logical. Okay, so you can have infinite regress. You can have a regression to something that was contingent, that's just a brute fact, or you can have a regress to something that's a metaphysical necessity. There's really only three options that I can think of. If somebody can give me another one, I'll be happy to listen to it. But those are the three that I can definitely think of: infinite regress, contingent, or metaphysical. The infinite regress.
So in terms
I've got a random question.
Hang on, Tom. Go ahead. What's that? What, Tom? What?
Is this related to the
Munchausen
trilemma?
Yes. Yeah, this is definitely related to Munchausen and Agrippa. You could force it to, because what it would be would infinite circularity or brute fact. Obviously the infinite works. The brute fact works, the contingent. You would have to force, and I thought about this the other day, you have to force the metaphysical necessity to be circular, but it kind of does, because you're positing a metaphysical necessity to explain something that explains the metaphysical necessity.
So you either have an arbitrary stopping point, or you have circular reasoning, or you have an infinite regress.
Right.
Right. So it seems to me that there's certain demands humans have based on our macroscopic understanding of the world. Now, if you look at, kind of the base reality that, all theoretical physicists or cosmologists are attempting to come up with, a lot of them seem to be eternal. They're, all the models of cosmology, cyclical universes, multiverses seem to be eternal. Even a singular kind of no boundary proposals have a B theory of time where the universe could be eternal, and there's no real beginning. It's just different frames of reference in the entire universe. In the way we understand reality, it seems that humans are at a poverty to describe this thing, right? Like to describe how our reality came to be, and we're uncomfortable with realizing that, how could it be that in our macroscopic understanding of cause and effect, that we could have an infinite regress, that there could be a beginning to everything? How is that possible without a causal agent, right? So understand.
Well, hang on. It wouldn't be a past infinite, and no boundary proposal is not past infinite because it only gets you to t equals 0 using imaginary time.
Right. But you could still have something that's eternal in existence, and t equals 0 is just a frame of reference in time, given the B theory of time. So
that's why it works. Yeah.
No, that's what works.
But that leads into multiverse if you take that on board.
No, I mean, I don't subscribe to singularity theory anymore. I'm definitely I subscribe more to multiverse.
I mean, singularity is kind of outdated. It's
outdated, of course.
Yeah,
it's a bit outdated.
Right. So I subscribe to more to a multiverse, many worlds interpretation of cosmology. And
so you subscribed up to level 3 multiverse then?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, but
you guys learn on this channel. We talk about all kinds of different stuff, right?
I mean,
read stuff.
Apart from physics, like let's kind of forget about the physics aspect of things, but in the way like understand William Lane Craig's concern, right? He understands that there needs to be a personal cause because there needs to be a decision to be made to actually transition from a null state of absolute philosophical nothingness. And I just don't even agree to the premise that it's even possible to have a philosophical nothing. Like something like that is not.
I am agnostic.
You have to. So I think first you have to prove that it's even probable or possible. I think we can have conceptual kind of vision of that, but I'm really, I don't think that a philosophical nothing is something we should demand as a null hypothesis. We should not demand that.
No, I totally on board with you. First of all, I don't think that a philosophical nothing. I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm probably going to say that I don't think it's possible, right? However, I can't make a decision on it either way, right? But it seems to me that that philosophical nothing is incoherent with what we know about reality. Okay, so I don't know what it would mean to have philosophical nothing. If that's the case, where if you can't have philosophical nothing, then that would basically mean that the multiverse is eternal, which is just as mind-boggling confusing as if you have philosophical nothing.
Eternity is impossible.
But yeah, even the Christian hypothesis, if we are going to call it like that, there is no philosophical nothing. There's an eternal God existing. So
right.
that's not nothing.
Yeah,
that's just saying, reality is mind-boggling, and I agree with you 100%. Like, just the fact that we're alive is mind-boggling. I agree with you.
Well, but in your life at this time, though, think about 100 years ago, people wouldn't even have a clue what multiverse theory was.
Right. But I mean, and I'm also talking about multiverse also necessitating a many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics.
And I hate that because I'm a Copenhagen guy.
It doesn't actually necessitate.
I'm older than you folks, man, and so I've been around longer. It's a diehard thing for me. What do you want?
Okay, but wouldn't you say many worlds interpretation is the most parsimonious kind of interpretation of quantum mechanics? I mean, like regardless of what you think about, like, would you not agree at least that
the mathematics, it's more parsimonious with the math. I just can't stand the fact that bloats the ontology to almost
But Steve, that's like saying the multiverse blows the ontology, but it doesn't. It doesn't. In the same way. But multiverse doesn't blow anything.
Level 3. Okay, look at
Multiverse is the most simple. It's just the wave function evolving through time according to the Schrodinger equation. There's not actual like bloating anything. It's actually less bloated than Copenhagen.
Look at
multiverse is less bloated than Copenhagen.
Okay, the problem I run into is this.
We will convert you, Steve, to the many worlds interpretation today.
Okay, so,
you taking off, Carlos?
Yeah, no. Before we devolve into something like a clusterfuck like Copenhagen and everything like that, I've got a bit of a thought experiment, which comes back to the microscopic universe. Are we actually touching anything?
No.
No,
we had this discussion the other night. Yeah,
that was addressed like yesterday.
Yeah, that was yesterday.
Yeah,
new topic tonight.
Fair enough.
All right, so Tom, the thing I have is this: I'm fine with a level 1 multiverse, okay? And if we take a level 1 multiverse to basically be a Hubble's volume, so I'm sitting here, I have a Hubble volume of the observable universe. If I go somewhere else, like to the edge of our observable universe, I have a new Hubble sphere, and that new Hubble sphere is going to be a different part or include different parts of the universe that I don't have access to.
Yeah, so it's not causally connected.
They're not causally connected, and they never will be. Now, level 1
might actually.
How are they causally connected?
With
based on the
quantum entanglement, they might
based on cosmic microwave background radiation, there's speculation.
Well,
there's kind of interactions.
Hang on. The problem with causality being quantum entanglement, it means they had to be causally connected sometime in the past, and the only time that was during was reflation.
I'm just saying they might be causally connected with.
But we know there's parts of the universe that are not causally connected.
I'm not claiming they are. I'm just saying. I mean, should two quantum entangled particles away from each other, eventually they will be in different Hubble spheres, but they would still be quantum entangled. So to speak. They're
not observable either way. Let's argue.
Yeah, they are not observable.
Okay, so they could be. Okay, fine. They maybe have a causal relationship. They're not observable. That's what a Hubble volume.
Can we agree that observable or an observation has nothing to do with consciousness, and we can move on from?
No, because I think
you can't say that.
I would agree.
I can't say that because I think there's some things to be said by the conscious collapsing of wave functions. But I don't think we fully understand.
Steve!
Oh my God!
Steve.
Yeah, we can't prove that yet.
No,
hold on. But we understand that an observer is a system interacting with another system in a different quantum mechanical system in a different.
How are we going from multiverse?
It doesn't necessarily entail a conscious observer.
There is something called the conscious collapsing of wave function theory.
I'm not.
But do you? Okay, no, there is. But do you subscribe? No, Steve, there is. But do you subscribe to that?
I'm not. No, but I don't necessarily rule it out either.
Okay.
But by the same token, I don't necessarily rule out orchestrated.
Yeah, but I mean, ruling it out, what does it mean? It's probabilities in terms of how we interpret these things.
Orchestrated objective reductionism has been around since I was a kid, and just now they're coming around saying, "Hey, there's more to it than what we thought." So
is there any theoretical physicists that actually subscribe to the consciousness?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is for.
Right. But nowadays,
Penrose, right?
Nowadays, is there any theoretical physicist that subscribes to
the
consciousness?
Yes, in the last year or two, they're actually finding out these microtubules do exist. There are quantum fluctuations there. They're actually
but microtubules aren't. Yeah, but that doesn't have anything to do with the measurement problem in quantum mechanics.
Well, the measurement problem has to do with how we know a quantum wave function is actually collapsed.
Right. So it's nothing to do with microtubules. I mean,
by the way, how do we go from agnostic to physics? I mean,
I don't. But I love the discussion.
You think I just happen to know all these different subjects for some?
I love the discussion regardless.
We just jumped the gun, man.
Don't tax me too much here, okay? I'm the idiot. Remember, I'm the one that people go, "Oh, that's Steve. He's a dumbass."
No one says that.
Steve.
No, you're not a dumbass.
Steve, you're the smartest guy in the room, and that's actually a problem.
Tom knows this shit better than I do. I never want to be the smartest guy in the room because then you don't learn anything. You don't learn as much.
No. That's actually probably often your problem.
I tell you though, I was hanging out, and I got to hang out with Dr. Hugh Ross and Dr.
Landon Kernol, and I've talked to
uh,
Landon Kernol as well.
No, I mean literally, I was
He's
hanging out
nice.
with them talking to them face to face. A whole bunch of PhDs, Dr. Richard Howe, and a whole bunch of them. And they were thrilled. We were having the best conversations, and they would want to come on our channels. And I'm like, yeah. So
Don't you think there's a psychological element to the fact that Hugh Ross is such a smart man, but he refuses to accept human evolution just
yeah, the
based
biology
on
stuff he's way off.
scriptural? No, but you understand how that can really fuck with people's brains, right?
Yeah.
Like the way.
It's a shame, but he's a nice guy.
Yeah, no, of course,
Very generous.
100%.
And I wish if everybody was like him, I'd be okay. Because you know what? I mean, he's not as he really believes what he believes, and I think the world of him. Now, do I disagree with him on his biology? Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to see you have him on your show and just talk to him.
Oh, he's been on.
No. But you talk to him, bring him on a New Non-Sexual, and discuss just evolution and have a friendly discussion.
He's been on this channel twice, and
but discussing evolution.
Yeah, we talked about it with him and Fazwana.
Oh, so, okay, I missed it.
Yeah, this channel's been around a while.
Yeah.
Okay,
can I ask you a question, Steve?
Sure, why not? I guess it's Q&A. I get to put Q&A in the title. This is why people join all these different. Holy crap! I'm still on level 1 multiverse. I haven't got to level 2 and 3 yet.
Okay, now before we I just say this. For the past 30 minutes, you guys have been speaking about something that I have absolutely no clue about. So I've just been sitting here dumbfounded, like, what the hell are you guys talking about?
Oh, you know what? All we do is sit here and Google as we do this, right? That's all.
When are we going to talk about string theory?
I Google with my penis.
Oh, please, Godless Aussie, bring the topic back to something where you can chime in.
Well, that's the thing. Even with philosophy and epistemology and ontology, I know nothing. That's why I got in touch with Steve, so we can have a powwow.
Yeah, we're now talking about quantum mechanics.
And I have.
I was actually having a question about evolution. I'm not really big in biology and evolution, but Steve, did you hear about this guy called Weinstein?
Who?
Einstein.
Weinstein.
Eric Weinstein. I think.
I know Weinstein. I know what's called Weinstein's barrier.
No. Well,
Eric Weinstein is an intellectual dark web member.
Well, I guess he had a talk with Richard Dawkins, and
name sounds familiar, but I don't know. The name sounds really familiar.
Mathematician, I believe.
No, that's his brother, Brett Weinstein. But Eric Weinstein is into evolutionary.
He's the biologist, right? So.
And he became famous because he was on this university that got in the news about. Well, you should know about that more than I do. With some social justice warriors about having a day where no white people are allowed on a university, whatever. But that's not related to the question. But he had a talk with Richard Dawkins about evolution, and he has a slightly different view about it. Did you hear about that?
Mm-hmm.
Not doesn't ring a bell. Well, I will have to look into it more, I guess.
Yeah, tell me what you got on. I mean, I try to read whatever I can. I mean, I'm just inundated by my stuff any longer. But yeah.
Well, I think it is Eric Weinstein.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, man, I lost where we left off. I mean, I'm not going to finish the multiverse thing. I'm just going to be done with that. And say manifold. Once you get past level 1, which I do accept, level 2, not so. But level 3, where you start having, actual universes being created. I'm like a creator being every time I make a decision. Right. Every time I decide something, universe is being created.
Have you heard of cosmological natural selection as kind of put forth by Lee Smolin?
Hang on, another rabbit hole. Holy crap!
No.
Every time I say something is a rabbit hole.
Stick with level 3.
Do you subscribe, Manifold, that every quantum mechanical event will branch off and be bisected into another universe?
Of course.
Okay. Now, do you hold that? Do you hold that for the entire multiverse?
Yeah, every quantum mechanical event that interacts with another system necessarily has a branch of the wave
So-
function, but it's still encompassed by the entire wave function.
So
But there's no way to actually predict what branch you'd be
well, no,
in,
I
right?
get that, but
Is that level 3 or level 4?
Okay,
that's level
continue.
No, 3.
so if you
Level
have a
4
quantum
is
level 4 is just anything's possible. Anything's
Yeah,
mathematically possible. But
discount level 4.
yeah, don't level 4 is there's no evidence for it, I don't think at all. But if you have a quantum mechanical event that's outside of our Hubble's volume for level 1, or even outside of our universe, so you have a different universe in level 2, those are now creating new universes every time there's a single quantum mechanical event in all those things. I mean, that is I just can't imagine that having every time there's that's an infinite amount of universes at that point, literally an infinite amount of universes.
Okay, Steve, but here's
yeah,
the thing.
I don't know if you could say that there's an infinite amount of universes, because there's still constraints by quantum fluctuations and gravity. You still have certain constraints that you can put
All
upon.
right, okay, how about this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I mean, there's constraints. So in terms of like there's an infinite amount. I think that's a bit of a misnomer. There's still constraints you can put in terms of the universe is created, and in terms of the way Boltzmann brains are generated. Like, because you can say there's a Boltzmann brain problem.
Oh God,
but
now you want to brains.
Yeah. So
I
I
don't
mean,
quite know
if
Boltzmann.
everything is possible and everything's going to be created, we're majority likely that we're Boltzmann brains.
Maybe we just
actually
maybe physics is getting to the point where it's just overcomplicating things. Maybe they just need to go back to basics a little bit. I don't know, because when you start getting
but Steve, it's overcomplicating in a way that we've extrapolated quantum field theory, quantum electrodynamics, and everything we know about physics into a really neat mathematical package like string theory that is a quantum gravity. It is a theory of quantum gravity. It is a theory of everything in the way that has gone to the point that it's almost unfathomable to test experimentally, right? This is a problem that we can't test this experimentally, but in the same way we arrived at the Higgs particle and other kind of extrapolations of our mathematical theories, we've arrived at string theory, which is absolutely, that I can't even comprehend how we're going to test this.
10 dimensions.
Yeah. No, but I mean, like, build, particle accelerator the size of the entire galaxy or something like that. But it doesn't. But just because this isn't easy. This isn't something that you go in a bar, get drunk, and come up with, right? This is a very rigorous model that comports with everything we know about physics, and it is a quantum theory of everything. So we need to give it some credence, even though we haven't experimentally verified it yet.
I'm not against string theory, but the problem, things with string theory is right now it's just a mathematical theory. I can probably imagine up to 4 and 5 dimensions. It's when you get up to the 10th dimensions, which is the same thing as the level 4 universe, that everything's multiverse. Everything's possible at level 10 in string theory. And so all we're trying to do with string theory is to try to explain the internal mechanisms of a point-like particle that doesn't have any dimensions, like a lepton. So what's the constitutive parts of an electron? Well, there isn't any. Now we have to develop the string theories to try to explain certain things. And now you're dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 compactified, up to 10 different dimensions that are compactified in a space that's pretty much doesn't exist, because it's still 0 dimensions for a point-like particle.
Right, but it is at the Planck scale. It's not that it doesn't exist.
I get that.
Right, and we have kind of theorized the graviton is an emergent kind of aspect of
the
string
graviton
theory.
just for symmetry, because you need a force carrier.
The graviton is the force carrier.
Right. That's what I'm saying. That's why we have the theory for the graviton that's never been discovered.
No, but string theory came up with the graviton kind of unwillingly. Like this was a particle.
Gravitons, because there hasn't been any experimental.
Yes. We have tested we have tested gravitons.
The theory. No, we have never.
No. Hold on. LIGO and testing gravitational wave is an experimental verification of gravitons
no.
in a way.
Okay, but you don't confuse people here. The theory that predicts gravitational waves, which we've known needed to be for a very, very long time,
is relativity.
Also, well, yeah, but it also predicts the graviton, because whenever we have a force, you have to have a force carrier. For example, for weak decay forces, the force carriers are the Z boson, the W boson.
Yes, we have Feynman diagrams for all of these.
Yeah, and so to have a symmetry for a force, the way the theory would work would be that what's the force carrier for gravity? Well, that was they hypothesized the graviton, even though they've discovered all the other force carriers. We know the Z.
Right, but you realize string theory's extrapolation of the graviton was
no. I'm fine with the theory.
But it wasn't.
I'm just explaining to the audience, because you got to remember they don't.
Okay.
That very few people in our audience.
Okay, so but okay. But so the graviton wasn't like we need to explain. The graviton from string theory didn't emerge that, okay, we need to explain a force carrier of gravity, so how are we going to come up with it as a post hoc explanation? This actually arose.
I didn't say it was post hoc.
No, I agree with you. I just want to explain to the audience that this was a kind of an emergent aspect of the mathematics of string theory, that it wasn't a post hoc explanation. And we got to the graviton in a way that was extrapolated from string theory initially. Right, so this is actually pretty amazing. It's pretty spectacular. You would agree?
Yeah. What I think is pretty spectacular is that we start off talking about atheism, we get into quantum mechanics, level 1, and then we're talking about string theory. It's like we hadn't even have a fucking clue about any of this stuff. It's like, really?
I agree.
Okay, so
hey, I'm so happy I remember what an intermediate vector boson is. Okay, I don't get to talk about that stuff on non-sequitur. I did graduate from nuke school. Whatever.
That's a great.
Give me so much shit for that. You graduated from nuke school. You goddamn right.
Yeah. I don't know why people are. There's people that try to diminish that, and I think that's bullshit. I think
it's hilarious. I guarantee
that actually the education required to go through that, it's not bullshit.
They would have failed out. I mean, the people that want to diminish it, good luck with it, because it's not like anything you've ever experienced. It's not like college, because they take college and they take all this information, and you've got 2 years to qualify.
Folks, I think we should take it back to Godless Aussie. He would probably ground us down to a more specific. He is, I guess, but he's just listening. And
well, how many things have we talked about tonight have you never been exposed to before?
Everything.
There you go. That's what I want for this channel. I like the fact that people can come here and go. And the best comment of all night, no offense to you guys, but the best comment all night was actually something line feed that actually said Matt Dillahunty on the Ethics Fairs never talks about any of this stuff. This is why we have other channels where you can learn things that other channels are not going to tell you about.
I'd like to really thank you about talking about this, because I haven't been able to talk about this thing to anyone else. There's very few places in the world I'm able to talk about these topics.
But I think we are going away to some degree way off, and maybe some people get lost on the way. So maybe we should just ground it down a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Then, I've got one then. Kadama FOE.
What?
Kadama FOE said, agnosticism is just a different sect of atheism.
Yeah, well, and are they wrong? Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, of course. I mean, again, the people that say these things, they're just. I mean, I hate to use the word ignorant or inept, one or the other, but they don't bother actually learning about the actual topic. And by the way, Mandelbrot, no, you don't get a PhD from nuke school. It's about equivalent to one of the classes I took that I got coursework for was a 403 level course, I believe it was, in system analysis, which is basically, your last year of college, senior level. So it's about a bachelor's level that they try to cram down into 2 years. Some people have said we did master's level work. I don't believe that. But it's not so much the level of difficulty, right? It's the fact that you're taking 4 years of college basically, and you got 2 years to qualify. And it's a lot of information that they throw at you, like a ridiculous pace. That's what makes it very difficult. I mean, when you went to college, they were in college, you've all taken chemistry, you've all taken 5-level courses, right? Imagine having all those at once. That's what Nuke School is. It's really the pace, because you're at school 20. You may get 4 hours of sleep some night. You're just studying. That's all you're doing. You're memorizing verbatim, and the amount of information you have to memorize is ungodly.
Right. And you see, physics for me is a hobby. I actually studied physics officially, and I really quickly realized that I cannot make a career in physics.
It's
So
hard,
I quit.
right?
If physics is hard, so I went into economics, right? That's much easier.
Well, Off the Hook's taking these courses.
But
She's gonna be a
physics
Yeah,
remains
it's not
a
easy. I can
hobby.
tell you that.
Yeah.
Physics is
Definitely.
Physics remained a hobby for me, and I would call myself like a well-informed layman.
That's why I
at
like
best.
me. I think I'm a decently informed layman.
I think the
Yeah.
average
Oh,
person
you're higher
really.
than that, Steve.
I think the average
I can't do
person
physics
really.
12 any longer, but I understand the
Yeah.
concepts. Right?
I think the average person really doesn't realize the difficulty in new, physical models, actually comporting with everything we know about nature, everything we know about physics, comporting to all the laws. I think people think that, scientists just pull shit out of their ass and just come up with stuff, and they're just speculating these things. Like when you come up with a model that's peer reviewed, you know how difficult it is for it to actually comport with all our observational data. These are very few and far between. So when a scientist comes up with a theory or a hypothesis that comports with all this information, this is very rare. Not the average person can't come up with this. This is extremely difficult. We have so much knowledge that to come up with an idea that actually comports with all this is
You don't
just
try.
Yeah,
I'm
think
trying
about
to
it.
get
Most of those people that come up with these ideas and all these experiments, they're usually older. If you get like the newer generation, like kids between 16 and 25, they're so used to handheld technology, they just Google and poof. They're
Yeah.
not willing to take the time and the effort and the research. They just think everything's handed to them and they're lazy. They're not willing to go the extra mile to do it properly, and that's the problem.
Landon's supposed to help me get Leonard Susskind to come on this channel one of these days. We're on.
dude, you're kidding me. Leonard
Wow.
Susskind.
Yeah,
He's friends with him.
Are you getting Leonard Susskind on
Well,
the channel?
that'd be awesome.
He keeps saying that. I mean, he keeps telling me he's going to try. Landon knows him. They're
Oh
friends.
my god.
Yeah. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
I will be shitting
I have
my
his book
pants.
here somewhere. It's
What-
laying around.
What do you think about the black hole firewall theory? Oh, hold on, we're getting too far into the.
He lives close to me.
Yeah, he's in Stanford. Well, obviously the firewall
But
paradox, but it gets resolved, and I do think information is conserved.
No,
But,
but black hole paradox, like it's not the black hole paradox, it's the firewall.
Yeah, the firewall will basically to one observer you're destroyed.
That
and one
comports with information conservation, right?
yeah,
Like
because
Susskind actually agrees with the black hole firewall.
yeah, because part of you, well, one observer you get destroyed, the other one you don't, but the information stored on the event horizon.
It
of the black
is.
hole.
Yeah, you just get scrambled all over
Yeah.
the horizon.
No, I'm familiar with it. I mean,
Yeah.
read it work.
So is it
Yeah.
because there's some people think that it's kind of like a gentle kind of singularity where you go
Whoever
across
said
the
that
event,
was
like you're
gentle.
fine, like you can cross the event horizon without actually experiencing any negative effects.
Yeah, some
never
The black
If-
so the black hole firewall actually posits that at the event horizon there is an actual firewall where as soon as you hit it, like you're
We're
pretty
supposed
much
to be like
dead.
frozen in
Like,
time
you're
forever.
the
Technically,
information is conserved, but just because of the kind of
well, if you're in a supermassive black
high
hole
energy,
rotating a Kerr-Newman type black hole rather than a Schwarzschild black hole, then you wouldn't even probably notice the firewall.
Okay. Before we go on, I think Kadama Everway just asked you, Steve, is space-time superfluid?
Somebody just messaged me something along those lines today, and I haven't looked into what they meant by that. I don't know.
Fair enough.
how about the holographic
superfluid,
principle?
as in it, like
I
it
do.
can't bend or be altered. Is that what they mean by superfluid?
I don't know.
I
They would
don't
have
know.
to specify, I guess.
I do subscribe to the holographic principle. Yes, absolutely.
I like
it's a
that
theory,
one.
it's
Yeah.
a theory of entropy. Like
The amount of entropy is equal to
like Bekenstein actually
skeptic?
developed out along.
well, it's basically the entropy is equal to the area of the black hole times the
Yeah.
Boltzmann constant times
Mhm.
something else, speed of light. I don't remember the exact formula, but it's basically the entropy is related to the surface area, speed of light, and Boltzmann constant.
I think I think people's problem with the holographic principle is just the words describing it, like using holographic principle to describe that
Well, they think it's
concept.
woo-woo,
Like they
right?
don't understand it, but it's actually a very
I agree
concise
with that.
understanding of entropy and
Absolutely.
how it
I'll-
manifests
the
on
best
on
way
a
to
black
describe
hole
it's a
event
very
horizon.
the non-physics person. The best way that I found to describe the holographic principle is basically this: if I want to describe the entire state of a system in an area, the information required to do that is encoded on the surface area of the
Mhm.
of the room itself. So if I'm sitting in my room and I say all these particles moving around, everything that I need to know to describe this room is encoded in the amount of entropy that's on the walls. That's how much it
Right.
takes. So the reason for that is, and the reason they call it the holographic principle is if you have a two-dimensional holographic card or layer and you shine a light through it,
You
it'll
can
produce
project a three-dimensional image.
it has
yeah.
all the information coded in there to produce that three-dimensional object.
Yeah.
Same principle. Now that
Yeah.
doesn't mean we're projections, okay? It doesn't
No.
mean we don't have form or substance. Or
That's the thing people don't understand.
Right.
They think that they're actual holograms and the way holograms are created, but they don't understand the way it's just the way information is stored.
But that's how flat earthers try to. They don't understand the topics. They have misconceptions like that, right?
Yeah.
This is like the Nephilim Free when he doesn't understand biology. He has misconceptions, right? Because they don't understand the concepts.
Or Aussie Jesus. Shots fired.
Oh God, was he?
They don't even know what an equilateral triangle is. You think they're going to understand anything about quantum mechanics?
What?
They don't
How can
understand
you?
basic
How can you
physics.
not
They're
understand?
there.
How can you not understand an equilateral?
They don't understand
triangle?
angles, dude. Brett's tonight showed him an angle like this, right? It's something similar to this, and he asked him, "Okay, if B's here and A's here, are the angles equal?" And he's like, "No." It's like
they don't even understand that
I
direction.
remember this from high school. or
First
even
off, you
grade
have to ask
school.
them to count from 1 to 10 and see if they could do that first. And
I
then
mean,
take
4
it from
times
there.
90 is 360. I mean, do we not get that?
Opposite angles of intersecting lines are always equal, and
Yeah.
the congruent ones are equal to. So if you have congruent ones are always equal to 180. So the angle here and the angle here has to equal 180 because if you think about it, if you have like this, right, you have 90 plus 90. So you like the way my I like this. Here, 90 degree
Look
angle
like you're
here.
trying to dab. Do a
Yeah,
double dab.
double dab. So yeah,
Double
like
dab.
visual. I hated geometry.
I also like your mathematical problem earlier about 90 or 0.0625, I believe. It just
Did you get it right?
Yeah. It was right away. It's obviously 90. I don't even. I couldn't even comprehend how you got 0.06.
Well, that's I made that problem up actually,
Yeah.
but it goes to an older problem of 6/2 divided by 1 to minus 2, and people.
It could be a visual issue when you have a division symbol. It's very hard because sometimes when you understand kind of when you have a division symbol, it kind of goes over an entire. It's the way you kind of draw it, like mathematically. So I can understand how some people might be confused and they just don't. It's not that they don't understand the order of division, multiplication, and addition and subtraction, but I think they're just confused in the way.
No, I don't think they understand the orders. I really don't.
Really?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Let me just get some people the.
We used to have a song for it in middle school where you would remember the order of it. I can't remember what it was, but it used to be like a little cute song where how you'd remember it's like division, multiplication, subtraction.
But the problem is people even if they understand PEMDAS or BODMAS or
that's what it
BIDMAS,
is. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, but here's the problem with this. Okay, what they didn't learn it properly. I don't think because I see a lot of people that still don't understand BEDMAS or BIDMAS or BODMAS.
See, I would never like if I had a piece of graph paper, I would never write that out mathematically in the way it is in a computer, right? In the way it is linearly. I would never write that equation.
Well, yeah, no,
I would write it
true.
differently.
Yeah. Okay. So let me put this equation. This is the one that started on Facebook. 6 divided by 2 parentheses 1 plus 2. That was one of the Facebook equations that actually got me on the internet. Like a decade ago.
Right. So it's 3. Yeah, 3 times 3.
Okay. So the solution is 9.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay. Obviously, to us,
You could, but hold on, Steve. You could see how that could be
Forget who you're
considered.
talking
You
to.
consider how that could be considered 6 divided
I know
by
this problem
2
inside and out.
two
Let me-
two
let me
brackets.
explain the
2.
issue
So
here.
it could be 6 divided by 6.
There's
Like you could see, but that's a visual.
I see. No, I know how
it's a
they make the
visual error.
mistake, but
Right.
here's the facts. There's something called standard order operations. Okay,
Yeah.
those are.
It's a
not,
visual error. It's not that people don't understand that, though, Steve.
I think that they don't because they
Really?
think. Okay, let me. Okay, so Ali,
No, I agree.
let me ask
Hang
you.
on a sec. Manny, I am math literate, so I definitely do not know.
Okay, so let me ask Ali. Ali, do you agree that multiplication division has a higher order of operations and precedence over addition and subtraction?
Oh, of course. It's
Okay.
part of it. Mhm.
Okay, do you think the division has a higher order than the multiplication?
See, that's where it gets confusing. Me, I would go with that first because it's more difficult and that's just my strategy. And I guess it depends. Yeah, I mean, that's how I would personally do it usually.
Okay. The problem is
That's
that
where it gets confusing.
in PEMDAS, PEMDAS, M and D
Mhm.
are equal. There's M doesn't come before D and D doesn't come before
It's
M.
really strategic, which is easier for you, I guess.
No, listen very carefully. Again,
No.
the way you work a solution of a problem, a linear equation has only one of 3 things. That's to have one solution, an infinite number of solutions, or no solutions, right? So it can only have one solution if it doesn't have infinite or none. This has one solution. Multiplication and division are the same order of operation. They have the same precedent level. They're done in the order they appear as left to right.
From left
But
to right.
but in a linear description, why would you use the slash symbol over the division?
It's called a
symbol?
solidus or a slash.
No, but you're right. So why would you?
Because
Wasn't
now
that
let me-
the reason
let me
was
explain-
because
let
the
me explain.
computers?
Because, well, one, it was a typographical issue back when.
Yes.
the
Oh,
obelisk,
because the computers, yeah.
especially. But
the 2 dots over a line.
that's an obelisk. But obelisk, ISO, International Standards of Symbols.
Man, I'm impressed, Steve. You know all this shit.
I know this problem. The obelisk has
Steve's too smart for his own good.
The
He knows
obelisk,
every word and every term. Like, I know what you're talking about. I know the words associated with those things. I can't believe you know all these little things. That's awesome.
well, let me explain it real quick because the obelisk has been
Steve knows
forbidden
his shit.
by the standards of industries for symbology. Okay, so it's ISO has forbidden the use of obelisks.
Mhm.
But that was for typographical reasons. But the reason why it's important to know this is because my daughter, when she was learning math, this is how they teach it in California using this type of linear notation. That's why it's important. So if you want to help your kids out, you need to know this math for them. That's
When I tried
the
helping my
takeaway.
son with his long division, they teach them a whole separate way. Like, I couldn't even help him. It wasn't like you draw the little one above the singles digit. Like, they taught them the past 5 years a totally different way for like simplistic math. And like, I almost couldn't help him. I can get the answer, but I couldn't get the way to it. Like, the teacher wanted him to show the work. It's so much different now than it was 20 years ago. It's really, and it seems like it's more difficult than it needs to be. Like, they're going above and beyond and they're adding too much. It's just too complicated for them.
I think it is complicated. I mean, I looked at some of the stuff they had. They were learning arrays, like in 2nd grade. I mean, 2nd grader's not going to understand an array.
Yeah. But they expect them to, and that's sad because they're not going to very well.
Yeah, and by the way, Andrew points out gamma versus PEMDAS. Yeah, gamma would be a grouping, exponentials, multiplication, addition. But there's also PPMDAS. There's BODMAS, which is brackets, orders, division, and the rest. And there's also BIDMAS.
PEMDAS
which is
is what I
brackets,
grew up
indices.
with.
Yeah, I know this. Trust me, I know this problem
So
very well.
so
I know
Steve, if you,
videos, you're
so
good
Steve,
with it.
if you're to actually do a mathematical equation and try to do that, would you actually, on a piece of paper, actually notate it that way, just on a personal level?
No,
Would you
what
do
I
that?
no,
I see. Because that's my argument. I would do. I would notate it that way.
personally myself,
I would
right?
notate it.
Is because I know how to solve that particular problem using order operations. I get it, right? But I wouldn't write that way because there's ambiguity involved. Because there's something called implicit implicit multiplication by juxtaposition. Have you ever heard that term before? Because you're learning all kinds of shit. If you want to go deep,
No,
Steve goes
no,
deep.
no, no.
Yes,
I'm going to be
person.
honest. I haven't
Okay.
heard by juxtaposition.
Let me go deep here. Ali,
Okay.
can I go deep?
Go.
I would love you to.
Can we get that on soundboard?
Please do.
Actor McGillicuddy, go to.
He wants me to go deep. Okay.
I do. I need you to.
Oh, God, just get that on the soundboard.
I have to do this. I have to do this. Oh my.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Amazing.
Okay, so one of the ways they teach mathematics, and the reason for this is because mostly the way we have calculators, and to save how you input something in a calculator, you want to take the least amount of I hate to say it, but pushing the buttons to do it, right? So there's something called implicit multiplication by juxtaposition. And that's usually given a higher order of operations, meaning that if there's no implicit multiplicating sign, like 2 multiplication 3, if it's implied where you just have 2 next to a parenthesis of 3 without the explicit multiplication binary operator, that's taken to be a higher order of operations. But there's no rule for that. There's nothing in mathematics that says that. Some papers will use it that way. Some won't. It's a matter of convention. If your instructor says we use that convention, do it. That's fine. If a paper you're reading, uses the higher order of precedence for implicit multiplication by juxtaposition, fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem you run into is if you don't know what to use, you have to fall back to the default. You have to fall back to order of operations since it's only one solution. So the ambiguity is there that you can solve it using a different order, but there's no ambiguity. By solving by PEMDAS, there's one solution. That's 9, bar none, no discussion. It's math. It's not like, is there a God?
Agreed.
This is math. It is correct. I will stake my channel.
It's just the way, as a mathematician, I would never write out an equation. Just in
Are you a mathematician?
Yeah. But I'm an engineer, but I've taken advanced mathematician, advanced mathematics and physics.
Did you ever watch my video on? I did a presentation. I did like 5 presentations on calculus. One of them was on.
I think I've watched one of them, not all of them, but
Do
yeah.
you remember that? Do you remember how to do
videos are awesome. Let me tell you, very good.
Yeah, I started advanced calculus in high school and then went into engineering in college, university. Yeah.
And if you have a calculus background, you'll definitely be able to pick these up. It's really good.
I think I gotta admit, I honestly thought I did a pretty good job on those things for not talking about calculus for 25 years.
I felt cocky for you. That's how good they were. I even took so many, Steve, I read them to you. I took so many notes. I have a whole notebook full just on 3 of your videos, just taking notes, even though the stuff I kind of knew, but like the way you explained it made it easier for me to help other people and break it down. If I was just tired that day, just the way you break it down makes it easier. And you also give like alternative, like your video.
I also understand it.
Steve, I have a friend like you that actually remembers things they learned like really far back, right? Like, so you've for me, my memories were
I'm getting old. My memory's fading.
Yeah. Yes. But your memory's good. Like you remember things you learned in school, in college, in new school. You remember those things. You remember certain things. I mean, and that's not easy as you get old. You know that. And I think that there's a certain type of people that actually remember a lot of things a lot more, and you definitely remember a lot. But I mean, the great thing about mathematics, it is very logic based. It isn't something like that. It isn't about memorization. Mathematics isn't about memorizing dates, names, things like that. It is an extrapolation of logic in a certain way, and the way you understand calculus and things like that, like it might be difficult at first, but it is a logical extrapolation. So I think that anyone can actually get a grasp of mathematics. I think just I think just like Neil deGrasse Tyson actually brought it up. I don't think mathematics should be something that the vast majority of people are afraid of or scared of.
No, I think that they need to learn it earlier too. I learned it later. I mean, I was having algebra in like 6th and 7th grade, but I didn't really understand it until later, right? I mean, I didn't. I think
that's not normal. I think I did algebra about 6th grade too. Isn't that normal? It's typical.
But the great thing about math is that you don't have to memorize things. That's the great thing. You don't have to memorize things. It's a very small amount. Like,
I mean, I'll tell you, they need like 10-year-old memorize multiplication. They're trying to
when you grasp basic algebra, like a squared plus b squared equals like very basic aspects of it, you can extrapolate that to like the most complex aspects of mathematics, right? Like it's something that you don't need to memorize dates, names. You don't need to learn interpret Shakespeare. Like those are complicated. I think those are far more complicated.
Well, I think that's subjective.
I think
that's
something
why.
like interpreting Shakespeare or things like that are far more complicated than mathematics.
All right, what's
I
this?
think
What's
mathematics is
what's
very
this?
basic.
Now again,
Some things,
hang on,
some things you have to memorize.
hang on. I'm not Googling, right? Your hand check. Okay. Ali, do you see my hands? Do you see my hands?
I do. I see both of them.
Okay, so what's this from? Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I've come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The good that men do is often interred in their bones, so let it be the Caesar. The noble Brutus hath said Caesar's ambitious. If so, is a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar has answered to it.
Shit, I know this one.
And that
I'm a little
sounds,
off.
that sounds like something I read like my freshman year of high school.
Shakespeare.
Yeah, something I can't be able. Which Shakespeare is it though? I know it's Shakespeare. But which
The
one?
noble Brutus hath said Caesar is ambitious. If so, is a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answer to it.
Well, Steve, you just got assassinated at the
Julius
15th
Caesar.
of March.
Yeah. How about this one? What light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise.
Oh yeah, Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah, so I did have to memorize all that stuff. I actually took a little bit of theater.
We did too. We had to interpret it, and it was so subjective. The problem is our teacher, if she didn't like what you were putting out there, well, it's an opinion how you take
Well, what
it.
is this? What
It was
when
wrong.
Juliet says, Romeo, wherefore out there, Romeo? Wherefore out there, Romeo? What is she asking? This is like the most common question people ask about Shakespeare.
But yeah, that's the most common.
Do you know what the question actually means?
She did explain it, and we went over it, but I can't remember to be honest.
She wasn't asking where you are.
Not physically.
Yeah, what she was asking is, Romeo, why are you to the house of Montague? Why are you not a Capulet? Because she was asking, what are you? Why are you not something that I could actually marry? And by the way, people don't remember this, but do you know how old they were?
They were really young, right?
He was 17, she was 13. They met over a portion of a weekend, and over a period of one weekend, they fell in love, committed suicide, and like 3 of the 4 people died. That's a pretty messed up.
The sad part is something like that happened hundreds of years ago, and they make it this huge, beautiful story. But shit like that happens every day on the news now, and we don't think anything of it.
No, nowadays when it happens, it's like people go to jail. Every day. Yeah, but yeah, that's literally it's Romeo and Juliet is a story of a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old that fall in love and end up 4 people dying because of it. So
I didn't know he was 17. I thought he was like 14 or 15 and she was 13. I didn't know there was that much of an age gap.
Yeah,
we have laws in the U.S. that are called Romeo and Juliet laws. Right?
Yeah, really?
Yeah, I think it's it was in Transformers. I think it was Texan. I think it was.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet laws are basically if somebody's 18 and somebody's like 17, then it's not considered to be.
If you met earlier, if you were in a romantic relationship when you were young, like kind of like 13 and 14, or 13 and 15, and all of a sudden that 15-year-old became an adult and the 13-year-old was still a minor, if they were still continuing that relationship, that wouldn't be considered kind of pedophilia just because they were in a relationship prior.
Yeah, I mean, like I had a girlfriend when I was up in Washington. I was 18, she was 16, but we dated for 2 years.
But you'd have to have a physical relationship for it to be.
Usually, 16. Okay, there's nothing illegal about it, but
and especially some states give you parental consent,
and I still talk to this day. I mean, so it wasn't any nasty stuff. I mean, it's only 2 years between us.
Yeah. And some states give you approval as long as the parent of the minor or the younger one is within so many years.
18 and 16, that's really not a big deal. Okay, that's
no, you're not talking about like 12 and 25.
It's not just about an 18-year-old having a relationship with a 15-year-old. It's actually based on having a pre-existing relationship before you hit that age. So it's not just about the age. It's actually, you were in a relationship prior. So it's
Elvis and
it's nuanced.
And, what's her name?
It's very nuanced.
She was 14.
Wow.
That was his wife.
I can't say anything because I dated a lot of guys that were older than me when I was in high school and under 18. And I think if they got arrested, I would have thought that was very unfair and not right.
You're pure and innocent, and you've never touched a man. This is the narrative we're going with.
No, I don't know for a few of them, but no, not all of them.
She's like, no, I touched a few guys. Yeah.
Oh, most of them. But my parents were
Wait.
okay with it. Like they met them. It wasn't just like I was taking them off.
Speaking of
Really
touching
met-
guys, hey Fester.
We had a real relationship, so it wasn't like some dirty, thing like that. So they were okay with it.
Oh my.
Oh my.
Hey, Steve, I wanted to touch on something you said earlier.
What do you want to touch?
Ooh.
Oh, dear God.
Well, now that you're interested in what
You
I
give
want
me
to
the
touch on,
vapors.
it's not what I want. What you talked about earlier. Now it's just your hair.
It is
So,
right.
yeah. Here
This Pantene Pro V.
I'm stroking my screen right now.
I can picture him in a commercial waving that golden locks and just putting his head back and
Down to my
forth.
nipple. It's down to my
When
nipple.
when
getting
people
long.
are talking in arithmetic operations, when people are talking about in what order things need to be done, you kind of hit on something, and there was something that could be added to it when you said math and division are essentially looked at as the same. There's neither one of
One's
them
reciprocal function of the other.
exactly, because one's a reciprocal function of the other. So when I was taught it kind of tricked me for a second until my teacher was like, think of it like this: rewrite the entire equation, but instead of rewriting it with a times, a division, a plus, and a minus, group the times and the divisions up, convert them all to one, either times or division, and then do the same thing with the addition and subtraction. And then you look at it and go, now there's only two options. You have to find a logical decision again.
That's a really good idea.
And
Actually,
I've done stuff like that.
That
Where
makes it easier.
in nuke school, you have to take algebra first, then you take calculus. But you kind of do your algebra such that you try to eliminate a lot of the divisions. You actually try to turn it all into multiplication. There's reasons for that, because you're more likely to make a mistake. And the whole thing about nuke school is you don't make mistakes. You don't want to make mistakes. So one of the things, because you're dealing with a reactor, you want to make sure that
That's the least thing you want to have.
One of the techniques they teach you is something along those lines, where you because division is reciprocal function of multiplication. If I have 1 divided by 2, right, we to get 0.5, I can just take 1
times negative 2.
one times. Well, hang on.
0.5.
Well, 1/2 is 0.5, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Look, all I'm gonna say is this: is that if we all just became flat earthers, we can just throw meth right out the window.
I was gonna say it'd be much easier. We could just say, screw it. We don't need to know. We'll just
in
look.
nuke school, did you have to have corroboration from kind of a peer if you were to take an action, needed a calculation? Did you require kind of authorization to have just have like someone else actually confirm your calculations? Was that mandatory?
No, because
I'm just curious about that.
No, because well, okay, let me rephrase that. In the fleet, you do. For example, let's say that you have to shim the rods, meaning that you have to take the rods and they're going to be moved up or moved down. So the way that works is this: these rods in the type of reactor we had 9 rods. It was a D2G type plant, and the rods have these screws that would come up the top, and they were very thick screws, right? I mean, like that big thick, but they're stainless steel. And what would happen was these control rod drive mechanisms would clamp on it like this, and these would be magnetic clamps. So what happens if you lose power, they would spring up. So there was a spring on them. So if you lost power, what happens is these things that were connecting on the screw would open up like this, and the screw would drop down.
You mean the radioactive rods that
the radioactive rods
created the energy for the?
Well, they didn't create the energy. They actually
radioactive. Yeah,
they were called poisons, meaning that they absorb neutrons. But the screw would such that when these things rotated, the screw would go up or down. Okay, so that's what raised the rod. If you want to figure out how much you wanted to be at a transit, if you want to know how much I had to raise rod height to say, okay, I need this much steam because I'm going at this many nautical miles and I'm at this conditions in the plant, I need to raise rod height a certain amount. Those calculations, if you were to do it manually, people have to check those things. You don't shim for very long. You like literally shim and you're done. But so you count 1 or 2. Not that I did it very often.
Was it difficult to do, or was it pretty easy?
No, actually the most complicated, believe it or not, there's 2 things that I think were the most complicated in nuke school to figure out with the reactor. One was what's called the shutdown rate equation, The shutdown rate equation.
Oh, that's an important one. I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's a very important equation in nuclear kinematics, and it has to do with.
If not, everyone goes bye-bye.
Well, the shutdown rate equation does a couple of things. One, you have what's called beta bar, which is your how much beta, how many effective neutrons you have for physical isotope. In uranium, I think it's 0.0064 for delayed neutron precursors, and the shutdown rate equation will tell you how much xenon is produced and promethium is produced after you have a shutdown. Because what happens is you have a rapid insertion of the rods, and you have all these gases that are produced, believe it or not. And these gases are poisons. They absorb neutrons. And so you have to actually calculate how long you have to wait in order to restart the reactor. You cannot just take a reactor and once it's gone offline, once it's scrammed, and start raising rod height again. Because think about this. You have this gas in there, xenon. I think it was like xenon 140 and promethium and a few other ones. Xenon's a big one. But xenon likes to absorb neutrons. So what happens if you have a gas in there that's absorbing neutrons? You're raising rod height, but now the gas is absorbing all the neutrons. And now you have to raise rod height so much further to get the same amount of reactivity added to the core. Well, now you basically expose more fuel to the neutron flux, meaning that you decrease the amount of life expectancy of the reactor core. And those are very expensive things to we fit, right? So by the way, I actually did have to learn this shit at one time. Wow.
I didn't even know that. Wow.
I don't talk about this stuff often.
Isn't that what happened at Chernobyl, Steve?
Chernobyl. Yeah, well, Chernobyl is interesting because Chernobyl used to. Do you know there's a material that Chernobyl produced? It's called corbonite. Ever heard of that?
What's it called?
Yeah.
Corbonite.
Coronite?
Corbonite.
Is that what Corbonite? Is that what the elephant's foot is made of?
It's actually a new material. It's that reactor created, and it's basically a mixture of all the shit in the reactor core, cement and everything else. And they call it the elephant's foot. It is the most radioactive hotspot on the planet. 5 minutes exposure, you're dead. In 2 minutes, your cells already started to go away.
Oh, I've heard horror stories. Yeah, it's really bad.
Yeah.
Oh, there's another horror story out there with it's either Chinese or Japanese nuclear physicists. They poured and something that you're supposed to like have set in there. They like literally poured it from one glass into the next and had a nuclear explosion. 2 people died instantly. The third person that lived, his body basically decayed off of his bones in 80 days.
Yeah, you're talking about the and I know exactly the thing you're talking about. I've seen a video on that.
While he was alive?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I've got to say one thing though. I think all of y'all are wrong because if comic books tell me anything, that's how superheroes are born.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The most deadly.
Well, some of them.
Things, like for example, have you guys ever heard of a demon core? Demon core.
I haven't. I don't know.
A demon core was a core made of plutonium, and it's like so big. And they were basically mishandled it, and they had 2 halves of the demon core, and they got too close together, instantly erupted in a shower of radiation.
Oh,
that sounds lovely.
That was that old experiment where I don't know. I think it was one of the very first nuclear experiments that went wrong, where he was trying to demonstrate
corium. That's
where you could
corium. My bad, guys. I had to fix that. Sorry, corium, not corbonite.
Where you could move the half shells into each other, and he dropped it, and that was the bad thing. And he got a lethal dose of radiation. Yeah. He was doomed, but he knew that he was doomed, and he sort of put the halves out again, so nobody else would.
I think he dropped in kerosene or something. I don't remember.
It was in the early days of radiation experiments, and he was trying to
demon core.
Yeah, it's called a demon core.
Oh well, yeah, wasn't that supposed to be like the used for the 3rd atomic bomb? And they had the
first one was uranium. G35 used on
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a Los
man.
Alamos, wasn't it?
a little boy, and the fat man was Nagasaki, which was plutonium. And then when the I don't know if it was the third or the fourth one, but one after one that's when they were trying to use plutonium, because plutonium has a higher bit more fission yield. You can get more bang for your buck. Although both Nagasaki and Hiroshima, I believe, were around 20 kiloton.
Wow, it's a lot.
August 6th and August 9th, 1945.
This conversation has derailed rather quickly.
Dude, we talk about all kinds of shit.
Yeah, that's okay. It's informative.
You gotta,
I mean,
you got,
did
you,
it
you gotta be
derail
clear,
or
man.
did it evolve?
That's how you learn a little bit about everything.
Yeah, a little bit of everything,
I love that.
But I was going to tell you this: when you mentioned Chernobyl,
Steve, can you talk about more about Chernobyl?
Yeah, Chernobyl. The thing with Chernobyl was it was a very, very antiquated design. The Navy uses what's called pressurized water reactors, PWRs. And the thing with PWRs is that they're a lot more inherently stable because they have what's called a positive reactivity addition rate, or positive coefficient of temperature reactivity. And that's a fancy way of saying that as the temperature of the reactor heats up, the reactor tries to shut itself down. That's an inherently stable system, right? You don't want something that's thermal runaway effects. You don't want something that as it heats up to have more reactivity out of the core, because then you're fighting to keep it from having runaway, right? You want something that is literally, as it heats up, it's harder to maintain, because if it's out of control, it's going to naturally shut itself down. And
you have this.
Can you explain how you shut down radiation?
Well, the reason for this, was going to explain, water as it heats up gets less dense. As it gets less dense, the molecules are further away from each other. The atoms, are going to be further away from each other in the molecule.
They don't slow the neutrons.
They don't thermalize the neutrons as much.
Right.
235 has a cross section of absorption that likes thermalized or slow neutrons. When you have neutrons that are produced from the fission fragments that are produced from the initial fission of the uranium, those are fast. And so you have to thermalize them. You have to slow them down to where the uranium in the cell is going to be able to absorb them. And so water acts as that moderator, acts as a cooling medium, and acts as a moderator. Moderating means to slow it down. So as it heats up, it's less efficient because now the molecules are further away from each other. It doesn't thermalize as many neutrons. Good design. But Chernobyl had what's called a positive temperature coefficient of reactivity. What do you think that means? That meant as it got hotter, it thermalized better. And well, I don't remember if it was thermalized neutrons or not, but I remember this. As you got hotter, you had to keep it from going out of control. Not a good design. You want to have a negative temperature coefficient, not a positive.
We
Steve,
have a question.
It's Q&A night, I guess. I don't know. It's like let's ask Steve the most weirdest questions and see if we can make some shit up. I don't know.
We have a
thank you, Oshkosh, by the way, for the
99.
super chat.
Yeah. Would an antimatter atom produce antimatter spectrum? And what would that physical structure of antimatter look like?
Antimatter literally is just the opposite of matter as far as the charges. Okay, there's particles like majora, I think if pronounce it. What's a particle that's a particle of itself, like a neutron or a neutron? It's majora, isn't it? Particle. That the particle is basically its own antiparticle. But some particles, like a proton, you can have an antiproton, which is the same thing as a proton, only it's the opposite charge.
Correct. Yeah.
So the spectrum I wouldn't expect to change. Now, there are some really specific things in spectral lines that are interesting. There's something called fine line spectrography, which I find really fascinating. And I don't know if you ever have done this, but you have to take I did this in college. You have a gas tube, and it has anodes on it, and you put it in this little thing, and it puts a current through it, and it shines. And then you have to look at it through a prism and some other stuff, and it shows the emission or the absorption lines. And by looking at the absorption lines, you can tell what a gas is in the tube. Make sense?
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm very familiar. This is
mass spectrometry.
Yeah. Okay. So the way, and people that know, the way this works is that you have different series, like a Balmer series, and what the Balmer series is saying that there's certain orbitals that electrons have for an atom, like hydrogen, And every time that orbit is jumped, every time an electron goes from one orbit to the other orbit, it produces a photon, or it can cause a jump if a photon is absorbed. So there's two types of, there's actually three different types of spectrography, for the most part, two: absorption and emission. So if you look at a continuum spectrum and you see lines missing, that's absorption. If you just see the lines being produced, those are emission. But those lines correspond to the certain quantized states of the jumps of the orbitals. And we happen to see then the visual wavelength in the Balmer series. In the other series, they're in the UV range and in different ranges where you can't visually see them, but they do exist, these transitional states. But there's something very cool, and a lot of people don't know this. Those spectral lines, those are actually two lines in one. That's what, when you hear the fine structure constant, people have heard that before. The fine structure constant determines the fine structure of the lines, that because those lines are actually two lines. And the reason why they're two lines is fascinating. If I'm going to jump an orbital and I'm going to go from like a 3n to a 2n, okay? You guys remember the shells, S, P, Q, right? SP, D, F. Most people remember the shells from chemistry. You have 2 electrons in the S shell, then you have your P shell that has 6, and you have 6, 6, 8, and I think it's 12 and 16. But these shells can only hold a certain amount of electrons. And the orbital, when you have an electron that jumps from 3n to 2n, if the electron is spinning one direction, then the line's going to be a little bit this way. If the electron's spinning the other direction, the line's going to be over here a little bit. So it splits the actual line that you're seeing. It causes two lines to be produced. That's called the fine line or fine structure of spectrography. And the reason for that is kind of interesting. When you have a spin for a particle, right? Because it's in relationship to the atom, which is going to have a magnetic field. What happens when you have a charge in a magnetic field? It's going to produce a torque.
Right.
Okay. That torque, what we call curl, basically. Curl's a magnetic moment at a specific point in a tensor field that causes something to move or to curve. So the torque that's produced causes a magnetic torque to be produced on the particle itself. And what happens is it's going to try to right itself, but it's more near a different transition energy level than one spin down. It's toward a different transition energy level. So because you have two very close transitional energy levels, the amount of energy required to create a transition, in other words, the photon to be leaving to go from 3n to 2n, is marginally different. So if it's spin up, a photon is going to be produced with a specific energy level. If it's spin down, it's going to produce a little bit different photonic energy. And I think it's very, very minor. It's like 0.00045 electron volts. It's very, very low, but the direction of spin causes that split. Is it when we talk about the fine structure constant on the flat Earth stuff, when people bring it up, that's what dictates that. And that fine structure constant, without that, things wouldn't work right. Speed of light wouldn't work right. It would be way off. Speed of light's contingent upon that fine structure constant. The amount of degree of separation of fine spectral lines is contingent upon the fine structure constant.
I didn't know that, actually, Steve. I thought.
Hey, when I'm sober, I can talk about stuff. I'm not drinking tonight.
Yeah, I thought the energy released is always the same.
I did. Oh, well, you're not the only one, man. It's one of those things that you don't really think about. But you know, when you start learning about this stuff, you're like, wow, that's kind of cool. I never thought about that before.
Steve, I have a question. Is the separation between the two lines, is it like a distinct separation?
No, or you need to magnify it.
No, well, okay, no. I mean, what I mean to say is it sharp? Like, is it one to the next? Like, because it's representing the jump from one shell to the
quantized states. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
but if you look at the line, you need a really high resolution to actually determine that line is actually two lines.
Yeah.
Break in the middle. Yeah.
Wow, that's insane. That just shows that it doesn't require any to the conventional physicist or the conventional person looking at it from a Newtonian physics, it kind of violates the distance it has to travel over the instantaneous amount of time. Mm-hmm. But it's not really that. It's actually explained. Einstein explains it when he says it's just quantized states.
Mm-hmm.
jumping
that's
from
what they
one
mean by
to
quantized state, right? We used to
Yeah.
think of things of contiguous, right? We used to think there's a continual thing,
Right,
throughout this,
right.
and we realize it's not. And by the way, Daryl says fine structure determined by speed of light, not the other way around. I don't think that's true. I don't think that one determines the other. These are called natural units, and when you have natural units like the Boltzmann constant, the energy level for I think it's the electron, gravitational force, Boltzmann. I'm trying to think of some other natural units. Speed of light, fine structure constant. These natural units are fundamental. Planck's constant is a natural unit. These are fundamental things, and I don't think one's contingent upon the other somehow. That there is a relationship between them, such that if you know certain actual things like the length, the width, the measurements you're taking, like for example, Planck length, right, or time,
Planck mass, Planck length,
Planck's time, right? These are second. If you know the dimensional units, right? Like length would be Planck length would be a dimensional unit. Planck time would be a dimensional time for seconds. If you actually know like LM S minus 1, where you have like length times mass over time, you can actually figure out the actual measurements that for the other natural units, which is impressive. Because if you were an advanced civilization in another part of the galaxy, they're going to come up with Planck length the same as we would, just by using what's called qualitative analysis. It requires matrix theory and a little bit of linear equations.
But you know what?
I've done this before. I've literally done this, and it works.
You know why we came up with the Planck mass, and the Planck length, right?
Planck?
Yeah, the Planck.
Yeah,
I mean, just the smallest measurement that you could get a black hole out of in terms of the Planck mass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just saying that it's very interesting. If you want to go check it out, go look at natural units, and you can actually using linear equations and solve them using matrix theory. You can actually deduce other natural units from them. It's fundamental to the universe. Doesn't matter. It's not like inches or feet, right? An alien civilization is not going to have a foot, right? They're not going to have a meter.
Right.
They will have, if they know science, they will have a Planck length.
Well, it's kind of like distinguish between the speed of light. It's not really a speed limit. It's actually the description of causality in its fundamental form. It's not necessarily about the way we define.
No, I don't know about that. I mean, these things are a lot more fundamental to the existence of the universe than I think people give them credit for. But the speed of light, I mean,
I wouldn't describe it as a speed limit, whereas some people think that, why is the speed of light the way it is? Because some mystical force kind of distinguished that as a speed limit, like you can't go above it. But
no, I think it's just it's based on the other.
Yeah, it's not about speed. It's not about having a speed. It's about kind of the relationship between causality between different quantum states and parts of the universe.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve, there was something that was brought up in the debate earlier that I think you tried to correct them at the same time that I tried to correct them about the speed of light. The speed is, I believe it's Booleanator said something about the speed of light, and he was fundamentally wrong about it.
Yeah, he says speed of light doesn't change the medium, and it does. That's how you get diffraction.
So I would like to talk about that for a second. Do you agree with the quantum understanding of refraction, or do you think that light actually slows down?
No. Okay. My personal opinion, I don't really look at it as light slowing down. I look at it as light being will stop and go and stop and go and stop and go, and that overall consistency of it appears to be a slowing down, but it doesn't act. That's you're asking me if I'm looking at the quantized way of looking at it. Yes. And yes, I am. I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, because a lot of people get that wrong, and they just try to explain it in this way of, oh, it's light that slows down. No, light can't slow down. That's part of the
I agree with you. Yeah, but it's to the layperson. When I say light, like when they frozen light and stuff like that, when the light itself, if you want to get really pendant, if you really want to be myopic on this, light doesn't slow down. What happens is it gets absorbed and reabsorbed and absorbed and reabsorbed, but it's not actually changing the value of C. It's not actually moving slower. It just appears to, because it's a longer travel path. So what happens is when you have light going
Yeah,
through
so the
water.
frequency of the wave can vary, but it's the same speed.
Yeah, same speed. The phase, the front end is going to be the same speed. But what happens is in reactor, when you have charged particles moving faster in the medium than light is moving, propagating through it, it produces this very cool blue glow called Cherenkov radiation. So when you see these movies about nuclear reactors and they're glowing this blue weird glow, that's a legit thing. That is called Cherenkov radiation, and it actually is because those particles are moving faster than speed of light relative to the medium that it's in. But in free space, that's what we're talking about, speed of light. Speed of light in a vacuum in free space is the highest thing that anything with mass could ever get to, and it can't go higher than that. Yeah, Chernyakov's a Russian name. There's also what's called Bremsstrahlung. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
Bremsstrahlung is also known as breaking radiation. Bremsstrahlung has to do with producing of a photon as it I'm trying to think of the best way to explain Bremsstrahlung. Ionizing radiation is you have a photon, or you have an electron and orbital moving them around, and when it loses momentum, it'll because of a change of a vector, for example, it's moving like this and changes its vector, it has to release that excess energy. So when the atom releases the excess energy because of a change in vector, that radiation that comes off is called Bremsstrahlung.
Oh, okay.
This is why I can't stand flat earthers. It's like I had to fucking
right.
learn this shit, and they're coming onto our channels going, "Oh, droppity."
Yeah. I was watching something by Anton Petrov that was like a really interesting theory on virtual particles being the
Oh,
explanation.
I love that guy. His shit's great.
Yeah, it is.
He's a bit of clickbait.
Well, he's his voice. He's just kind of
I like his voice.
low, and it's just not.
I mean, he really abuses Universe Simulator to just.
Oh my god! I know he made me want to download it so bad.
What about virtual particles?
Well, what he was saying is that that there's a theory out there that says that anything that's accelerating in the universe causes virtual particles. Okay, because you're actually, when you're accelerating, you're changing the physical distance of your visible horizon.
Yeah, virtual soup.
Yeah. So what he's saying is that, like, when you begin to push something that's at rest, you're actually creating a difference in potential of virtual particles that causes it to push back a little bit.
This is actually the argument about something like Alcubierre drive in terms of, like, Star Trek warp drives, where if you were to actually try to practically implement them, you'd create literally like a plasma that would completely disintegrate you if you were inside that type of drive.
You hopefully would have an insulated bubble, like a deflecting thing. With the Alcubierre metric, requires negative energy and requires more negative energy than the entire universe to actually get anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, the entire if you'd require negative mass actually to implement and convert to negative energy.
Yeah, negative mass, which is
just
negative energy. Sure.
Yeah, but I mean, even Kip Thorne, that actually, Black Holes in Time Warp C, actually explained that even if that were, the warp ability were plausible, like in theoretical physics, to actually you personally move through that would just completely vaporize you, because it would create a plasma kind of situation.
Well, I think you would hopefully outrun it, right? It'd be like in your tail. But hey, off the hook, turn your camera on. People are like, who's the chick?
Not me. Mine's off.
Well, turn on. All they hear is your voice.
Wait, what?
Turn it on, because they don't. They're like, who the hell is that person? And you don't show up in the outside feed. So.
Yeah, no, they don't recognize
I have the camera off right now because I'm like not properly dressed. It's late over here.
We know what you look like.
And my hair is a mess.
You just talked off the hook in Discord. I don't know.
I have another question about virtual particles and Hawking radiation. What is the opposite of Hawking radiation? Like, when you have let's say you have a massive particle or a massive virtual particle escape into the black hole, and you get a virtual antimass particle on the outside.
It's called a real particle.
at that point,
It's just, I mean, it's just a quantum
But-
fluctuation that's right at the event
Right.
horizon.
If you're
But-
on the border, right? If you're on the boundary condition, right? And
Yeah.
you have a virtual particle being created, when the one half goes into the black hole,
Uh-huh.
the other particle that's going to be leaving is going to take away energy from the black hole. That's going to become a real particle.
Okay, so the way that most people explain it is that's why the black hole evaporates, because it actually absorbs negative mass.
It's a conservation of energy. It,
You can look at it that way, but
decreases.
it's still
now
losing
what-
energy.
What happens when it's the other virtual particle that goes in, when it's the particle that
Makes no
then
difference.
represents massive?
No, I think you're looking at it wrong. As long as
They're
the particle
equal.
goes in, whatever
Uh-huh.
particle goes out, that's the real particle. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Because you have two virtual particles. This one happens to be going in, the other one's going to get the mass, the energy that's going to be imparted from it going in there, negative energy. So it's going to take away from the black hole. That one's going to go off.
Yes, it's the same. It's
It's a
the
very
same
slow
effect. It's
process,
the same effect that we test in the Casimir effect, and we understand that virtual particles are real. And when you extrapolate them to the event horizon of a black hole, the virtual particles can no longer eliminate each other because they're immediately, they're separated by the gravitational influence of the black hole. So the causality gets broken, and now you have the one particle that's a real particle, and the other particle decreases the black hole.
I just was looking at something there's a new paper that's coming out, or just came out, I should say, and I didn't read the whole thing. So he sent it to me, but I just looked at it, but I'm going to find it again. But somebody was arguing that the Casimir effect is not due to virtual particles, but actually due to van der Waals forces. I'm gonna have to look into that. So I don't think that's true, but I think it's just a different hypothesis. But
Right.
Steve, I'm
Okay,
just
cool.
gonna say
That
I'm
is
glad
actually
that-
a good question, because I always wondered if you have virtual particles where one particle goes into the black hole and the other one escapes, and it is a 50-50 chance. Why shouldn't this affect, like, on the global surface of the black hole, cancel each other out?
Yeah, and that's kind of my argument right there, or my question right
Exactly.
there is, so when a virtual particle, or when a particle a virtual particle creates, it creates in a set, one that is opposite and equal in spin and mass.
It does cancel each other out. It does.
it does cancel out. That's
yeah,
why that's why you have to have real mass.
Well, yeah. So,
going into the black hole, it's virtual.
so
but
let's say we have one of the virtual particles that's created has a mass of x, and the other one would have a mass of negative x, relative mass. So basically, we're looking at it not like it exists, but that it has potential to exist. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're in opposite and equal spins to each other as well, so that no matter what, as long as they're not affected by being at the event horizon of a black hole, they'll always come back together and cancel each other out.
Well, they're supposed to. That's how they normally do, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's how you get conservation of energy. They eliminate each other, but in a black hole horizon, what happens is that the positive energy of the particle that escapes is offset by the negative energy that actually lowers the mass of the black hole.
What happens when it's opposite, when it's the
I don't know what that
positive
means.
that goes into the
Exactly.
black hole,
Makes no
and the negative
difference.
goes-
You don't care about the charge. What you're caring about is the fact that you have negative energy going into the black hole, meaning you have positive coming out on the other side. That's the conservation you give a shit about.
Yeah,
The
but
charge doesn't
you
matter.
you could have the positive going into the black hole and
You
the
have a
negative going out.
Okay, so what does it matter? You have a negative real particle, you have a positive real particle.
Well, the positive would feed the black hole, while the negative would diminish the black hole.
Well,
making it
first of all,
smaller.
you're assuming a charged black hole. Not all black holes are charged.
I don't know about that, but I mean, if you
Well,
just
right,
say
right?
Well, I mean, hold on, Arn. What are the properties of a black hole? Charge, spin.
Charge, angle, momentum, mass.
Yeah.
No Hare theorem.
Yeah.
By the way, we're gonna have Dr. Kroon on to talk about black holes one of these days.
yeah,
All right.
that will be very interesting.
And I got somebody else coming on too, Dr. Jeff. can't pronounce the last name.
And
I
gets
have-
us in on too.
When will this happen?
yeah, we're gonna start having some guests on in April. Oh, there she is. See,
Okay.
see, people like all they heard was a disembodied voice.
So the reason why
Briefly off the
I
hook.
asked that
You're muted right now off the hook.
the reason why I'd asked that is because I was actually, while I was meditating one day, and this was like a couple of days ago, I was just thinking to myself about Hawking radiation coming off, and that's the effect that we can kind of say that if we detect Hawking radiation, then we're detecting virtual particles at the event horizon. But what if it was a negative massive particle that was detected? What massive particles stretch or like they pull the space-time in like a three-dimensional sense. They pull space-time together to create a well. What would a negative massive particle do? Wouldn't it stretch it out a little bit? And could that possibly be what we understand as expansion?
I have no idea what you just said.
Does anybody understand what I just said, or did I just ramble?
I thought I did, but I'm sure that
Not really.
You guys lost me about an hour and a
Try
half ago.
again.
Hawking radiation. Let's say that you.
Yeah, I mean,
I get the word.
expansion is a repellent gravitational phenomenon.
Like I'm talking about.
You know.
Well, I'm talking about universal expansion, because then you would literally be adding to
Universal expansion is caused by dark energy.
Yeah.
Well, what's the
Negative pressure density.
Yeah, negative pressure density. Dark energy is what's causing Hubble's constant to increase.
Yeah.
It's the actual negative pressure gradient that's in the universe.
Yeah, also known as
from the
Sith
quantum
energy.
situation?
Dark energy and dark matter are completely different things, and so is negative. The way to look at it, read Krauss's book. He explains negative energies.
Dark matter is just a particle that we theorize. It's nothing more than any other particle in nature, except it doesn't interact with light.
By the way,
Unpopular.
Steve, what's your opinion about this Dutch guy, Verlinde, who is proposing a kind of a new theory that makes away with dark matter and dark energy?
Well, there's other theories out there. I mean, the most common is we call lambda CDM model, the lambda cold dark matter model, which, if I remember correctly, dark matter is baryonic, but it's cold. It doesn't really transmit much light, so we don't see it. But the lambda, if I remember correctly, stands for the gravitational constant in the Einstein's field equations. Because when Einstein said, "Hey, I got to account for this, and I'm just going to create a fudge factor of the cosmological constant," that's what we're finding out dark matter actually is.
Yeah, he wanted to make a static universe, so
he was not thrilled with the expanding universe, and he would have definitely been pissed with the expansion, and it's accelerating. Yeah.
Well, Manifold,
Yes.
I have to say something. What you were just saying. You were saying that that dark matter doesn't really interact with the other matter, but that's how we know that that there is dark matter is because it does interact with the other matter around it.
No, not really. It
That's how
doesn't
we
really
detect
interact
the
with it. It just causes a curvature of space-time. It doesn't interact with the matter. It interacts with space-time.
Okay, hold on. But we know it interacts with matter because we have observational kind of evidence, like the bullet cluster, right? So when we observe the bullet cluster, we realize that dark matter has influence on the matter in that kind of collision of those two galaxies. So it's not just that.
But is it influencing the matter? I mean, if
No, hold on.
It's just a standard gravitational effect. I mean,
we hypothesize that there is dark matter out there because we see the effects. We see the effects of the gravitational effects, and we can explain it except with dark matter. So
Okay,
we
so
hypothesize dark matter is out there, but dark matter actually seems to not interact with any other matter.
Yeah, I don't think it interacts with matter either.
Okay.
it's a sort of
What we know is we know this. We know that to distort light requires mass. Okay, that's the only thing that we know that can cause gravity is mass. And mass affecting gravity, gravitational fields will change the vector of a light. So we can observe these things. And when we say, okay, we're seeing light curve, we're seeing effects of a gravitational force. What causes that? Mass. These mass is dark. We don't see anything coming from it. There's no photons. Dark matter. So whatever it is, it's there. We know something exists. We're calling it dark matter because we can't see it because it doesn't produce photons.
Yeah.
Now it could be
It's just a
better.
gravitational effect. That's it. Yeah.
it doesn't seem to interact with anything else except it has a gravitational
Gravity.
effect.
Right.
That's all.
Anyways, I'm going to bed, guys. This has been way too long. We run the gamut. Oh my God, you guys are killing me.
I didn't want to say anything.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything because we started at what 2 p.m. It's now dinner time over here.
Yeah, we're way over our time. That's
Dinner time. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah, no. So, anyways, Godless, I hope you picked some stuff up because, boy, if you didn't learn some new stuff tonight, I don't know what to tell you, bro.
If I didn't learn anything from tonight, you could have just put a dunce hat on top of me like Team Skeptic does in some of his videos, and you could have just called me dumb.
No, I love the fact people want to learn. This is why I get frustrated on Facebook when I see some people that just they don't want to learn anything, and they drive me nuts because they don't know anything about anything, and all they want to do is argue. I'm not interested in that anymore. I'm trying to move away from that. I want to get into the more explaining and talk about. I don't want to let's have a discussion on this and debate. Whatever. Because you know what I've learned? Every time I get into those discussions, not a single goddamn person ever presents anything of substance of evidence wise, and it's like
It's all opinions.
Well,
I mean, at that point, they're just like a creationist to me. I'm just tired of it.
Steve, you're wrong because shut up.
Yeah, sure.
I'm breathing my holy book.
You're causing problems, Steve, in the atheist community. You know.
Oh my God.
You're meant to.
Steve, I have a debate challenge from a guy who wants to debate me on the existence of gravity. He's an actual flat earther, but he says that he has an explanation for gravity that has just as much
as long as it's not the equivalence principle where it's just the flat earth is accelerating constantly.
No, he doesn't want to debate the shape of the
The
earth.
equivalence principle would faster than the speed of light. You do realize that?
Yeah.
Is he
just, as long as they don't use that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a directing to him.
If he, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Sorry. Team Skeptic, if he wants to try and tackle direction, I've only got one response for him. Direction is subjectively relative.
Well, he's not stupid. I've actually watched a couple of his videos. He's actually has he can present his arguments intelligently, at least. They're wrong.
This is not Professor or Doctor, what do they call him? Doctor something or other?
His name is Way of Tahuti.
I don't know.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah. But he told me, he said, he just wants to debate gravity. If it happens, I'd like you to be there.
Yeah, I'll listen to him. Well, anyways, tomorrow I'm having my debate. It's going to be 1 o'clock, Modern Day Debates channel with, I'll be debating Duke is the Man on agnosticism, atheism, and going a lot more detail than we went into tonight. And he seems like a good kid, but he's going to get annihilated because.
Hey Steve. What I thought would be completely amazing is in terms of the mythicist debate, if you could ever get Richard Carey to come on to actually have it just not a debate but a discussion with biblical history skeptics. Because I think that young kid is extremely intelligent.
Yes.
And he's studying in the subject and he's criticizing. I don't think anyone else has that level of criticism against Carrier. And I
got to get back with Carey. Him and I were having a written discussion back and forth, one-on-one, private page, and I haven't gotten back to him yet. But Carey's, I like Carey, but he really has a bad habit of certain techniques that I'm not really thrilled with, like he'll straw man. He'll try to say things like, well, it's odd that you argued that. That I don't know why you would make such a strange argument. I'd be like, because I'm not arguing that.
Is he strawmanning typing or in terms of discussing kind of talking in a chat?
I don't know. I think I don't know. I think he has a lot of rhetoric and
when you're typing, everyone strawmans in a way because it's sometimes it's honestly hard to interpret what someone means. But when you have a discussion, I think you get a little bit further where you're more charitable to what someone says.
Yeah, I don't see a lot of principle of charity, that's for sure, with Carrier. And again, I like Carrier, but he needs to work on his principle of charity a little bit.
I think I would love to see him just chat with biblical history skeptics because I think
I would watch that.
He's a really smart guy, a really smart kid. And I think I don't think Carrier's an asshole. I think he would love to talk to someone like him.
Well, I got, Carrie agrees with me that atheists have a burden of proof, so that's cool because he's an atheist. He's a big
Yeah, but those are different discussions. Those are different.
I know, but I'm still, I'm like,
it's tough. Those are tough. Yeah, come on, Steve. It's different. Like when we're talking about, let's talk about the historicity of Jesus with biblical history skeptics. It's a different kind of thing than what you're.
I go for history, though. I'm a historicist.
Yeah, but you know what? People strawman Carrier because Richard Carrier isn't dogmatic about that Jesus was a myth. He has a probability that Jesus could absolutely be a real historical person. It's just it might have. So I think people strawman him that he's just some dogmatic person that thinks, of course, Jesus is a myth, and I don't accept it. Richard Carrier is a really smart guy.
Yeah, no, yes, but the problem is I've had people tell me that the use of Bayesian, the way he's using it post hoc like that to test for past events isn't really how you should be using Bayesian. Bayesian is only used for more probability for future events. So I don't know. I don't know Bayesian that well.
But I mean, Bayesian reasoning is just really based on the way humans reason, like the way humans think and analyze data. So it's almost like a naturalistic description of the way humans actually use logic, and it's a mathematical description of that. So I think you can still apply that to historicity.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I personally don't like it when people automatically say, "Oh, well, he believes that he definitely didn't exist." That to me, I like, no. If you're going to attack someone's argument, make sure you get the argument down correctly.
Yeah, that bugs me the most because I don't want to spend a lot of time defending my arguments that are not my arguments, right? And this is why Matt Dillahunty won't even talk to me. By the way, when he said that he won't talk to me because of reasons, your guess is mine. I don't know what those reasons are, and I don't care. I don't want to talk to Matt really. I have no interest. I have no idea. I haven't talked to Matt since he was on the Non Sequitur show.
What would you talk to him about, though?
Same thing.
I didn't even get what your disagreements would be. Are you going to just have a semantic disagreement about the agnostic atheist? That's so honestly, that entire discussion is so technical that really, don't you think it's just ultimately boring? Isn't it about what you believe, not just?
No, I think the argument was more fundamental than that. I like to put out truth information, and American atheists are not. It's simple as that. They're putting out misinformation, and so that's the problem. But anyways, Daryl says the equivalence principle is wrong. There might be violations of the equivalence principle, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong. It's still a principle, right? But there have been experiments done where certain conditions for conductivity, we have electrons moving through a wire, they act somewhat differently on the quantum mechanical level in a gravitational field as opposed to an acceleration. So there might be ways of actually determining it, contrary to what Einstein said, but these are still still in the realm of experimental. But that doesn't mean the equivalence principle is wrong. It just means there might be violations to it. Big difference. Daryl.
Okay.
Everything Daryl says is weird. It's like completely. He's been around a while, but I don't know.
Yeah, Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl. Sorry.
Yeah, Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl.
Everyone yell
I
at
think he's a
Daryl.
physicist guy, though. I
Hi,
think
this is my name is Daryl.
Daryl is
My
not
brother
wrong
Daryl,
on that
my
one.
other brother Daryl.
well, I'm not saying he's wrong, but it's weirdly worded. It's not the equivalence principle is wrong. It just might be violations to it.
Okay, yeah.
Is it kind of wrong?
Yeah, I think that's the way
Well,
things are
Steve-
worded.
Well, Steve, we
Well,
know that
maybe,
you're
maybe
always
he
wrong.
has, maybe he has worded it in a weird way.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say he's
think-
wrong.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's wrong either. No, all right.
Well,
Anyway,
I
say your
think
last
Steve-
words.
Oh, I was just gonna say that we all know that Steve's always wrong, so it's okay.
A lot. All right, come visit me for my debate tomorrow. I'm gonna get a good night's sleep because I gotta be up for
Steve
it.
is always right.
Shots fired.
May not always be right, but I'm never wrong.
Thanks for having me on, Steve. I really loved the
Oh, thanks,
conversation.
Manifold. Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys hanging in there tonight. We're gonna do more stuff like this. I think we need just to kick it like we used to do.
I
We used to
think
have
so.
a lot of good hangouts in the middle of the night and talk about all kinds of philosophical stuff, like getting Ocean in here would be amazing. It'll make you think.
I
Yeah,
just hope that YouTube doesn't shut all these things down. Like, seems
Channels,
like
channels are getting shut down. Jay Packett got his channel taken down.
I know. Yeah, he's a Croatian
Why
guy.
did he get it? Why did Jay get his taken down?
No idea. It said
I heard that there were allegations made against him that something about child abuse,
child
blah blah
endangerment.
blah,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
child
They don't-
endangerment, and
his channel's
he's
hangouts. That's all
gone. He's gone. The
that's
whole
all he had
channel
is
is gone.
hangouts. That's all he's had is hangouts.
Right.
I don't know how.
It's
I
kind
don't
of
know
weird.
what they were talking about. All right.
But,
Well,
but by the way, Steve, make up with Tom Jump and have him back on the show.
I don't have a problem with Tom Jump. I just, like I said, I don't like his style.
I
And
don't.
Tom
Yeah,
Jump can come on.
watch his last couple of debates with Rana. Like, watch his conversation. See how he does. Like, watch those discussions. I think you have a.
I know he talked to Ron.
Yes.
I don't like his style. I
Really?
don't,
Have
I
you
wanna watch
watched
his-
Have you watched his last discussion?
No, well, I started to. Rana pretty much talked the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Tom's not a bad guy. I think he
I'm
missed.
not saying
Kind
he
of
is,
took it
but,
just based on that IP discussion.
you know what?
Okay,
We were trying to help him out, and he way too much pushback for me. I'm not interested in that kind of.
Maybe it's too much, Steve. Maybe it's too much like you.
Ooh.
Wine
No,
girl,
'cause
what?
I have people that are smart give me criticism, and I sit there and I take notes.
Yeah.
I pick up a roid rage.
There's something to be said when you write 99% of the time. Sometimes it's a difficult ask to be able to understand self-criticism because you're a smart guy and you're right the majority of the time. And I think sometimes maybe it's tough to recognize when there's certain type of criticism.
Maybe I'm going to leave you guys with this. Have you guys listened to the Flat Earth song "Down on the Moon"?
Oh, dear
Oh,
God.
God.
I'm in it, and
Bring
I mentioned right before Neil deGrasse Tyson and Bill Nye.
What song is it called?
It's called "Dan on the Moon."
Dan of the Moon.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the video chat for you guys. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. Go watch this video. Leave a comment to them. It's a flat earther, but he wrote a song on flat Earth and included Simon Dan and Conspiracy Cat and Fight the Flat Earth, and he included me in it, and it's pretty freaking funny. It has
Hey,
Dell.
love you, Steve. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Manifold. All right, so go listen to that song on the way out.
Oh, this is gonna
Did he call you? Did he call you Deceive McRae?
Oh, it's just funny. You have to listen to it. You have to listen to
Okay.
it. I'll put it in the chat in here too. All right, good night, guys. And